The Alpha King found 2 heartbeats dying in the snow. He didn't know one of them was his. She was 8 months pregnant, bleeding, alone in a blizzard that had killed stronger wolves than her. He carried her home thinking he was saving a stranger. But when her fever broke and she whispered the truth, everything he thought he knew about loyalty, law, and love shattered like ice beneath his feet. Some bonds are forged in fire. Theirs was forged in blood, snow, and a secret that could destroy a kingdom. This is the story of the Omega who was never supposed to survive, and the king who couldn't let her die. Chapter 1. The Finding. The storm had been raging for 2 days. Clayton Mendez, Alpha King of the Northern Reach, stood at the edge of the gray march with snow driving into his face like shards of glass. His wolf was restless beneath his skin, pacing, snarling, sensing something in the wind that his human mind couldn't name. "My king," Vince Simon called from behind him, nearly shouting to be heard over the howling wind. "We should turn back. The storm's getting worse." Clayton didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the tree line ahead, where the birch forest gave way to open tundra. The Gray March was no man's land, a frozen wasteland that separated his kingdom from the fractured southern territories. No one came here willingly. No one survived here long, but the wolf inside him was pulling him forward. Find her. Find her. Find her. Her? He shook his head, trying to clear it. He'd ridden out with 4 of his guard to investigate reports of movement along the border. Probably smugglers. Maybe scouts from one of the southern packs testing his defenses. Not. The scent hit him like a fist to the chest. Blood. Fresh. Human. And beneath it, something else. Something that made every nerve in his body go taut and his wolf lunge against the bars of his control. Omega. Clayton was moving before he realized it, his boots pounding through the snow, his breath coming in white clouds. Behind him, he heard Vince curse and follow, but he didn't slow down, couldn't. The scent was a thread pulling him forward, and he followed it past a stand of frozen pines, down into a shallow ravine where the snow had drifted deep enough to swallow a man whole. And there, God. She was half buried in white, curled on her side with her arms wrapped around herself. Her dark hair was matted with ice, spread across the snow like spilled ink. She wore a thin gray dress that clung to her body, soaked through and frozen stiff in places. And the blood. There was so much blood. It pooled beneath her in a wide crimson stain that the snow was slowly swallowing. More blood than anyone should lose and still be breathing. Clayton dropped to his knees beside her, his hands already reaching before his mind caught up. He pressed 2 fingers to the side of her throat, cold, so cold it burned his skin, but beneath it faint, thread-like, barely there a pulse. And then he felt it, the second heartbeat. His wolf went utterly still. She was pregnant. The realization slammed into him with the force of a physical blow. He could hear it now, that he was close enough 2 heartbeats, one strong and steady, one weak and fluttering. The baby. There was a baby. Holy God, Vince breathed, appearing at his shoulder. Is she alive? Clayton said, and his voice came out rough, almost unrecognizable. Barely. He shrugged off his cloak, heavy black wolf fur lined with wool, and wrapped it around her body. She was light when he lifted her. Too light. He could feel the bones of her shoulders, the ridge of her spine, and beneath his hands, the swell of her belly. 8 months, maybe, close to term. Who was she? Why was she out here alone? Where had she come from? The questions battered at him, but they didn't matter, not yet. What mattered was getting her somewhere warm before the cold finished what the blood loss had started. Her head lolled against his chest as he stood, and a sound escaped her lips. Not a word, not quite a moan. Something between the two, a sound of pain so deep and exhausted it made his chest tighten. "You're not dying," Clayton said, and the alpha command in his voice was absolute, unbreakable. "Not here. Not today." He looked at Vince. "Ride ahead. Tell the healers to prepare the east chamber. Hot water, clean linens, everything they need. Go. Now." Vince was already turning, already running for his horse. Clayton carried her through the storm. The ride back to Wolfcrest Keep took an hour, and every minute of it was a war fought in silence. She drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes murmuring words he couldn't understand in a dialect he didn't recognize, sometimes going so still and quiet that he had to press his mouth close to her hair and listen for the thin whisper of her breathing. The blood from her wounds soaked through his cloak and his shirt and spread warm against his chest, and he could feel the life leaking out of her with every mile. He held her tighter. He rode faster. And the wolf inside him howled with a sound that was not hunger, not rage, but something far more dangerous: recognition. They reached the gates of Wolfcrest as the last gray light of afternoon was drowning in the storm. The fortress rose out of the snow like a mountain, black stone walls, iron-spiked towers, banners whipping in the wind. Home. The gate swung open before he reached it. Word had already spread. In the courtyard, Bessie Robertson was waiting. She was the head healer, a woman in her 50s, with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe braid, and the kind of steady, unshakable presence that came from seeing every kind of wound and every kind of death. She took one look at the woman in Clayton's arms, and her expression went flat and focused. Inside, now, he carried her through the corridors of the keep, past servants who pressed themselves against the walls to let him pass, past guards who stared with wide eyes. He carried her into the healing chamber where a fire had already been built high enough to push back the cold, and the long wooden table in the center of the room had been covered with clean white linen. He laid her down as gently as he could, and when her body left his arms, he felt the absence like a wound. Bessie was already cutting away the ruined dress, and what she found beneath made even her who had seen everything go still. The woman's body was a testament to suffering. There were bruises layered over bruises, old yellow ones beneath fresh purple ones. Thin white scars crisscrossed her back and shoulders. The wound that had bled so heavily was a deep gash across her left side, just below the ribs, made by a blade, driven in and twisted. There was a second cut along her right forearm, defensive. Her feet were bare and torn, bloody from running. And beneath it all, her swollen belly rose and fell with shallow breaths. How long was she out there? Bessie asked without looking up. I don't know. Hours. Maybe longer. Bessie placed her hand flat on the woman's chest and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her brow was furrowed. Her heartbeat is weak. But it's steady. Steadier than it should be. She paused. She's an Omega. I know. And she's pregnant. I know that too. Bessie looked at him then, and there was something in her expression he couldn't quite read. Do you know what this means? A pregnant Omega, bleeding out in the gray march with no pack, no house, no explanation? Clayton's jaw tightened. It means someone tried to kill her. It means someone tried to kill her and her child. And when I find out who— You'll do nothing, Bessie interrupted, her voice sharp. Because right now, your priority is staying out of my way while I try to keep her alive. She pointed to the door. Wait outside. He didn't want to leave. Every instinct in his body screamed against it. But Bessie was the only person alive who could give him an order and expect to be obeyed. So he turned. He walked out. He closed the door behind him. And he stood in the corridor with his back against the stone wall and his hands shaking. Chapter 2. The Forbidden Pregnancy. The woman woke, screaming. Clayton heard it from the corridor where he'd been standing for the past 2 hours. The sound tore through the heavy wooden door, raw, primal, terrified, and he was moving before conscious thought caught up. He shoved the door open. Bessie was at the bedside, hands raised in a placating gesture. The woman was sitting up or trying to, her eyes wild and unfocused, her hands clutching at her swollen belly. No, she was gasping. No, you can't, he'll kill me. Easy, Bessie said, her voice low and soothing. You're safe. No one's going to hurt you. But the woman wasn't hearing her. Her gaze darted around the room like a trapped animal searching for escape, and when her eyes landed on Clayton standing in the doorway, she went rigid. For a moment, they stared at each other. She was beautiful. Even now, pale and bloody and terrified, there was something striking about her. High cheekbones, full mouth, dark eyes that should have been soft but were hard with desperation. And pregnant. So visibly, vulnerably pregnant. Who are you? Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Clayton Mendez, he said carefully, keeping his distance. Alpha King of the Northern Reach. You're in Wolfcrest Keep, You're safe here. Safe, she repeated, and laughed a broken, bitter sound. There's no such thing. She looked down at herself, at the clean linen gown Bessie had dressed her in, at the bandages wrapped around her torso and arm. Then her hands went to her belly, pressing, searching. The baby. Alive, Bessie said quickly. Heartbeat is strong. You both made it. The relief that washed over the woman's face was so profound it was painful to watch. She closed her eyes and a single tear slipped down her cheek. How far along are you? Bessie asked gently. 8 months. Maybe a little more. And the father? The woman's eyes snapped open. The fear was back, sharper now. I can't, I won't. You don't have to tell us anything you don't want to, Clayton said, stepping forward slowly, the way he might approach a wounded wolf. But you were dying in the Grey March. Someone hurt you. If there's a threat we need to know about. There's always a threat, she said flatly. That's what happens when you're Omega. The truth of it hung in the air between them. Bessie cleared her throat. What's your name? The woman hesitated. Then, so quietly, Clayton almost didn't hear. Teresa. Teresa Wolf. Teresa. Bessie repeated, testing the name. Well, Teresa, you're severely injured and severely pregnant. You're going to stay in this bed until I say otherwise. Understood? Teresa's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Bessie glanced at Clayton. I need to examine her properly, alone. He should leave. He knew he should leave. But something held him there, some invisible thread connecting him to this woman he'd found bleeding in the snow. I'll be right outside, he said. Teresa's eyes met his again, and for just a moment, he could have sworn he saw something flicker there. Recognition, maybe. Or memory. Then it was gone. Clayton was back in the corridor when Bessie finally emerged 30 minutes later. Her face was grave. How bad? He asked. The blade wounds will heal. She's Omega, her body is already working to repair the damage faster than it should. But there's something else. Bessie lowered her voice. She's terrified, Clayton. Not just scared. Terrified. And she won't tell me why. Did she say anything about who attacked her? No. She shut down the moment I asked. Bessie paused. But I did confirm something. The child she's carrying is strong. Exceptionally strong. I could feel it when I examined her. What does that mean? It means the father has powerful alpha blood. Very powerful. Clayton frowned. You think she's bonded? No bond mark. No scent of another alpha on her. Bessie's expression was troubled. Which brings us to a problem. What problem? She looked at him steadily. The Omega Law of 1847. Clayton's blood went cold. The Omega Law. He'd nearly forgotten about it, an archaic statute passed generations ago during a time of brutal pack wars and bloodline disputes. It stated that Omegas could only bear children with their bonded mates. Any unsanctioned pregnancy was considered a threat to pack stability and punishable by death. It was a law no one had enforced in decades. Most kingdoms had quietly abandoned it. But it had never been formally repealed. She's not bonded, Clayton said slowly, which means she's carrying an illegitimate child. And under the law, that's a capital offense. Bessie's voice was tight with barely contained anger. If the council finds out, they won't, Clayton. They won't, he repeated, harder this time. We don't even know who she is or where she came from. For all we know, she is bonded and just separated from her mate. You don't believe that. He didn't. But he also didn't care. That law is barbaric, he said. I won't enforce it. You may not have a choice. If word gets out that you're sheltering an unbonded pregnant Omega, the sound of footsteps interrupted her. Both of them turned as Vince appeared at the end of the corridor, his expression tight. My king. The council is convening. Lord Harvey wants to speak with you immediately. Clayton cursed under his breath. Harvey Coleman, his chief advisor, and the most politically cunning man in the kingdom. If Harvey had heard about Teresa already, tell him I'll be there shortly. Vince hesitated. He specifically mentioned the woman you brought in. He's asking questions. Of course he was. Clayton looked at Bessie. Keep her here. Don't let anyone in except me. And if the council demands to see her, then they'll have to go through me. The council chamber was a circular room with high vaulted ceilings and narrow windows that let in slants of gray afternoon light. A heavy oak table dominated the center, surrounded by 12 chairs, one for each of the great houses that had sworn fealty to the Mendez line. 7 of those chairs were occupied when Clayton entered. Harvey Coleman sat at the far end, a thin man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp, calculating eyes. Beside him was Noel Castro, the Master of Arms, and Earl Foster, who controlled the kingdom's northern trade routes. All of them looked up when Clayton walked in. "My king," Harvey said, inclining his head. "Thank you for joining us." Clayton took his seat at the head of the table. "What's this about?" "We've heard rumors," Harvey said carefully, "that you brought a woman back from the Grey March. A pregnant woman. An Omega. I found her dying in the snow. I brought her to the healers. That's all." "Is it?" Harvey leaned forward. "Because we've also heard that she's unbonded, that she carries a child with no father to claim it." Clayton's jaw tightened. "Where did you hear that?" "Does it matter? What matters is the law. The Omega law hasn't been enforced in half a century. Because no one has violated it in half a century," Harvey interrupted. "But the law still stands. And if this woman is carrying an illegitimate child, she is subject to its terms." "You want me to execute a woman I just saved?" "I want you to uphold the law you swore to protect." Harvey's voice was maddeningly calm. "The Omega law exists for a reason, Clayton. Unclaimed Omega children create chaos. Bloodline disputes. Pack instability. We cannot afford. She's no threat to anyone. You don't know that. You don't even know who she is." Harvey was right, and Clayton hated it. "Give me time," he said. "Let me find out where she came from, who hurt her. Then we'll decide what to do." "The council has already decided," Earl said, speaking for the first time. His voice was flat, final. "If she cannot name the father of her child within 7 days, she will be tried under the Omega law. And if she can name him, then he will be brought before us to claim her, if he refuses." Harvey spread his hands. "The law is clear." Clayton's hands curled into fists beneath the table. The wolf inside him was snarling, snapping, demanding he shut this down with force if necessary. But he couldn't. Not without starting a civil war. 7 days, he said through gritted teeth. 7 days, Harvey agreed. Clayton returned to the healing chamber to find Teresa asleep, her hand resting protectively on her belly. Bessie was sitting in a chair by the fire, watching her. "The council knows," he said quietly. Bessie didn't look surprised. "How long do we have?" 7 days. If she can't name the father by then." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Bessie was quiet for a moment. Then, "There's something you should know. When I was examining her, I found something unusual." "What?" "A mark. On her left shoulder. Very faint, almost invisible. But it's there." "What kind of mark?" "A crescent moon, burned into the skin." Clayton went very still. "A brand." "Yes. And not just any brand. That symbol belongs to the Southern Territories. Specifically, to the House of Francisco Meyer." Francisco Meyer. One of the most brutal warlords in the South. A man who ruled through fear and violence, and had been attempting to expand his territory north for years. "You think she's his?" "I think she escaped from him. And I think he's the one who hurt her." Clayton looked at Teresa, sleeping fitfully in the bed, and felt a rage unlike anything he'd known. If Francisco had done this, if he'd branded her, hurt her, left her to die, "We need to find out the truth," Bessie said, "before the council does." Clayton nodded slowly, but as he watched Teresa sleep, her hand cradling the life growing inside her, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever the truth was, whatever she'd done or who she'd been, he wasn't going to let them kill her. Chapter 3. The Healer's Secret. Teresa woke to firelight and the smell of herbs. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it came rushing back, the snow, the blood, the impossibly strong arms that had lifted her from the frozen ground. The king. She was in the king's fortress. She sat up too quickly and her vision swam. A hand pressed gently against her shoulder. "Easy," Bessie said. "You're still healing." Teresa blinked until the room came into focus. The healer was sitting beside the bed, a cup of something steaming in her hands. "Drink this," Bessie said, offering it. "It'll help with the pain." Teresa took the cup but didn't drink. "What is it?" "Willow bark tea. For inflammation. I promise it won't hurt the baby." The baby. Teresa's free hand went automatically to her belly, feeling for movement. After a moment, she felt it a small flutter, then a kick. Relief flooded through her. "How long have I been asleep?" 2 days. 2 days. God. She needed to leave. She needed to run before. "You're not going anywhere," Bessie said, as if reading her thoughts. "Not in your condition. You don't understand. Then explain it to me." Teresa looked at the healer's face, weathered, kind, but with eyes that had seen too much to be fooled easily. Could she trust her? Could she trust anyone? She'd trusted Francisco once. Look where that had gotten her. "I can't," Teresa said quietly. "Can't or won't? Does it matter?" Bessie was quiet for a moment. Then she set down her own cup and leaned forward. "Listen to me carefully," she said, her voice low. "The council knows you're here. They know you're pregnant and unbonded. They're invoking the Omega Law." Teresa's blood turned to ice. "No. You have 7 days to name the father of your child. If you don't, or if he refuses to claim you..." Bessie didn't finish, but she didn't need to. Teresa knew what happened to Omegas who violated the law. She'd seen it once, years ago, in a southern settlement. A young woman dragged into the square. The pyre built high. The screaming, "I can't name him," Teresa whispered. "Why not?" "Because he doesn't know, and if he finds out..." She closed her eyes. "It'll destroy everything." Bessie studied her for a long moment. "Is the father Francisco Meyer?" Teresa's eyes snapped open. "How do you..." "I saw the brand. On your shoulder." Instinctively, Teresa's hand went to the crescent-shaped scar burned into her skin. She'd almost forgotten it was there. She'd tried so hard to forget. "Francisco didn't father this child," she said, and her voice was hard as stone. "He was my captor, not my mate." "Then who?" "I can't tell you, Teresa. I can't." Her voice broke. "Please, don't ask me again." Bessie sat back, her expression troubled. "Then we have a problem, because in 7 days, the council will demand answers, and if you can't give them, I'll be dead." "Yes." Teresa looked down at her belly, at the curve of life growing beneath her hands. She'd known this was coming, known from the moment she'd realized she was pregnant, that there was no happy ending waiting for her. But she'd hoped foolishly, desperately, that maybe she could run far enough, hide long enough, give birth somewhere safe, and then, what? Raise a child alone? With no pack, no protection, no future? She'd been lying to herself. "There might be another way," Bessie said slowly. "What way?" "The king. He could claim you." Teresa stared at her. "What?" "If Clayton declared you his bonded mate, the council couldn't touch you. The child would be legitimate. You'd both be protected." "That's insane. He doesn't even know me." "He saved you. He carried you through a blizzard. He's been standing outside this door for 2 days like a sentinel." Bessie's eyes were sharp. "That's not nothing. It's pity, not..." "It's more than pity," Bessie interrupted. "I've known Clayton since he was a boy. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you." Teresa's chest tightened. She remembered his eyes pale green, flecked with gold. The way he'd looked at her when she woke screaming. Not with disgust or suspicion, with concern. With something that almost looked like, no, she couldn't think like that. "Even if he would agree," Teresa said carefully, "it wouldn't work. The council would investigate. They'd find out the child isn't his. How would they know?" "Because..." Teresa stopped. "Because the child was his." The truth sat between them, unspoken but deafening. Bessie's eyes widened. "Oh God, Clayton is the father." "Don't." Teresa's voice was sharp. "Don't say it out loud." "How when..." 10 months ago, there was a gathering. A peace summit between the northern and southern territories. Teresa's hands were shaking. "Francisco brought me. He always brought me to those things. To show off. To prove he owned something valuable." She remembered that night like it was yesterday. The great hall full of alphas and their courts. The music. The wine. Francisco's hand on her arm, too tight, possessive. And then, there was a man, Teresa continued quietly, masked. Everyone was masked, it was part of the tradition. He asked me to dance. She'd been so surprised. No one ever asked her anything. Francisco decided everything for her. But this man, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a predator's grace, had offered his hand. And something in his voice, something warm and deep and utterly unlike Francisco's cold commands, had made her say yes. We talked, Teresa said. Just talked. About nothing. Everything. He made me laugh. I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed. One dance had become 2, then 3. Then he'd led her out onto a balcony where the air was cool and the stars were bright, and when he'd kissed her, God, when he'd kissed her, it had felt like coming home. I didn't know who he was, Teresa whispered. Not until the next morning when Francisco was raging about the Northern King's audacity in attending the summit uninvited. I saw him across the courtyard and I knew. Did he know it was you? I don't think so. We were both masked, and I left before dawn. I couldn't. Her voice cracked. If Francisco had found out, he would have killed me. And then when I realized I was pregnant, you ran. I tried to. The first time, Francisco's men caught me. They brought me back and she touched her side where the blade had gone in. He wanted to make sure I understood what happened to property that tried to escape. And the second time? 3 weeks ago, there was a storm. I knew it was my only chance. I took a knife from the kitchen and I ran. Teresa's voice was hollow. His men found me at the border. We fought. I got away, but... She gestured to her wounds. And you've been wandering the Grey March ever since. I was trying to reach the eastern settlements. I heard they don't enforce the Omega law there. But the storm. Teresa looked at Bessie. I was dying. I know I was. I'd made my peace with it. And then he found me. Bessie was quiet for a long moment. Does Clayton remember that night? She finally asked. I don't know. I don't think so. He looked at me like I was a stranger. That's because you were masked. And it was 10 months ago. Bessie stood, pacing now. But if he is the father, if we could prove it, we can't. Why not? Because I can't tell him. Teresa's voice was fierce. Do you understand? If he finds out, if anyone finds out, it puts him in an impossible position. The council already questions his judgment. If they think he got an unbonded Omega pregnant and then hid it, they'd call it a scandal, maybe even treason. Bessie rubbed her temples. But if you don't tell him, you die in 7 days. Then I die. What about the child? Teresa's hands curled protectively around her belly. The child is innocent. Maybe after I'm gone, someone will take him, raise him away from all this. You want to orphan your own son? I want him to live. Tears were streaming down Teresa's face now. Even if I can't. Bessie crossed to her and gripped her shoulders. Listen to me. I have spent 40 years healing wounds and birthing children and watching women make impossible choices. And I am telling you there is always another way. Not this time. Yes, this time. Bessie's eyes were blazing. But you have to trust me, and you have to trust Clayton. Before Teresa could respond, there was a knock at the door. Both women froze. It's me, came Clayton's voice from the other side. Bessie looked at Teresa, a question in her eyes. Teresa hesitated, then nodded. Bessie opened the door. Clayton stood in the threshold, and Teresa's breath caught. Even now, even terrified and grieving, and certain she was going to die, she couldn't help but notice how he filled the space, how the firelight caught in his hair, how his eyes found hers immediately. I need to speak with her, he said to Bessie. Alone. Bessie glanced at Teresa, who nodded again, though her heart was hammering. The healer left, closing the door behind her. Clayton crossed to the chair Bessie had vacated and sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. How are you feeling? He finally asked. Like I was stabbed and left to die in a snowstorm, Teresa said. Then, softer, but alive, thanks to you. I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me. Her stomach dropped. What? Who is the father of your child? There it was. The question she couldn't answer. Why does it matter? She asked quietly. Because in 5 days, the council will put you on trial. If you can't name him, if he won't claim you, they'll execute you under the Omega law. His voice was strained. I'm trying to find a way to stop that, but I need the truth. Teresa looked at him, really looked at him. At the tension in his shoulders, the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his hands gripped the arms of the chair like he was holding himself back from something. He cared. Somehow, impossibly, this king who barely knew her actually cared whether she lived or died, and that made what she had to do so much harder. I can't tell you, she whispered. Can't or won't, both. His jaw tightened. Teresa, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But please don't ask me again. She saw the frustration flash across his face. Saw him wrestling with something, anger, maybe, or confusion. Then he stood abruptly and turned toward the door. Clayton, she called. He stopped, but didn't turn around. Thank you, Teresa said, for saving me, for trying to help. I know you don't understand, but thank you. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, without looking back, I'm not giving up on you, and he left. Teresa waited until his footsteps faded. Then she buried her face in her hands and wept. Chapter 4. The Blood Bond. Clayton didn't sleep that night. He stood on the balcony of his private chambers, staring out at the snow-covered kingdom below. The storm had finally broken, leaving the world blanketed in white that glittered under the moonlight like crushed diamonds. Beautiful, peaceful, it made him want to put his fist through the stone wall. 5 days. That's all the time he had to figure out how to save a woman who wouldn't save herself. The wolf inside him was restless, pacing, demanding action. But what action? He couldn't force Teresa to name the father. He couldn't claim her himself without proof that the child was his, and even if he could, the council would investigate. They'd discover the lie. Unless it wasn't a lie. The thought had been circling his mind since he'd left the healing chamber, the way she'd looked at him, not with the fear most Omegas showed in the presence of a powerful alpha, with something else, something that felt almost like recognition. But that was impossible. He'd never met her before finding her in the snow. He would have remembered, wouldn't he? A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Enter, he called. Vince stepped in, his expression grim. My king, there's been an incident. Clayton's blood went cold. What kind of incident? Intruders. 3 of them. They breached the east wall about an hour ago. Where are they now? Dead. The guards killed 2. The 3rd escaped, but he was wounded. He won't get far. Vince paused. They were asking about the Omega. Of course they were. Francisco's men? Clayton asked. That would be my guess. They had southern markings. Vince's jaw tightened. If Meyer knows she's here, then he'll come for her. Clayton's hands curled into fists. Double the guard. I want sentries on every wall, every entrance. No one gets in or out without my authorization. Yes, my king. And Vince? Don't tell her about this. Vince raised an eyebrow. You don't think she has a right to know? I think she's terrified enough already. Clayton turned back to the window. Let me handle it. Vince nodded and left. Clayton stood alone in the darkness and tried to quiet the wolf that was howling for blood. The attack came 2 hours before dawn. Clayton was in the war room reviewing patrol routes when the bells started ringing 3 sharp peals that meant breach, followed by 2 more that meant multiple hostiles. He was running before the last bell finished echoing. The east corridor was chaos. Guards were shouting, steel was ringing against steel, and the smell of blood hung thick in the air. Clayton counted 6 intruders, all of them moving with the coordinated precision of trained soldiers, all of them heading toward the healing wing. Toward Teresa, the wolf surged forward, demanding release, but Clayton held it back. Barely. He didn't need the beast, not yet. He drew his sword and stepped into the fray. The first man went down before he even saw Clayton coming. The second managed to parry 1 strike before Clayton's blade found his throat. The 3rd and 4th attacked together, coordinated, but Clayton moved like water flowing between their strikes, redirecting their momentum, turning their coordination against them. Within 90 seconds, all 4 were dead or dying. The remaining 2 had reached the healing chamber door. Clayton's vision went red. He didn't remember crossing the distance, didn't remember the sword leaving his hand. But suddenly he was there, and one of the intruders was on the ground with Clayton's blade buried in his chest, and the other was backing away with his hands raised. "Wait, please." Clayton grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall hard enough to crack stone. "Who sent you?" His voice was barely human. The man's eyes were wide with terror. "Meyer, Francisco, Meyer, he wants her back. She's not his to take. He says she is. Says she's branded. Says she's carrying." Clayton's grip tightened. Carrying what? But the man's eyes had gone glassy. Blood bubbled at his lips. Clayton had crushed his windpipe without realizing it. The body went limp. Clayton let it drop and turned toward the healing chamber door. It was still closed, still intact. He pushed it open. Teresa was awake, sitting up in bed with a fire poker gripped in both hands. Her eyes were wild, her breathing ragged. Bessie stood between her and the door, a knife in her hand. Both women stared at him. Clayton looked down at himself. He was covered in blood, none of it his. His hands were shaking. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No," Teresa whispered. "We heard fighting, but they didn't get in. You..." Her gaze traveled over him, taking in the blood, the bodies visible through the open door. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Then whose blood?" "Theirs." He stepped into the room and closed the door behind him, blocking her view of the carnage. "Francisco's men, they came for you." Teresa's face went white. "How many?" "6 this time. More will come. Then I need to leave. Now. Before." She tried to stand. Her legs gave out immediately. Clayton caught her before she hit the floor, his hands gripping her arms. She was trembling, whether from fear or exhaustion or the after effects of blood loss. He couldn't tell. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "You don't understand. If Francisco knows I'm here, he won't stop. He'll send more men, bigger forces. He'll let him." Clayton's voice was hard as iron. "Let him send an army. They won't get through." "Why?" Teresa's voice broke. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I'm just, you're mine." The words were out before he could stop them. The room went silent. Teresa stared at him, her dark eyes wide. "What?" Clayton didn't know where it had come from, that certainty, that possessiveness. He'd never felt anything like it before. But standing here with her in his arms, her scent filling his lungs, the wolf inside him howling, "Mine, mine, mine," it felt true. "I don't know how to explain it," he said roughly. "But from the moment I found you in the snow, something in me recognized something in you, and I can't." He stopped, struggling for words. "I can't let you go, Clayton." A sharp gasp cut her off. Teresa's hand flew to her belly, her face contorting with pain. "What is it?" Clayton demanded. "The baby, something's wrong." Bessie was there in an instant, pushing Clayton aside, her hands already examining Teresa's abdomen. "Lie down," she ordered. "Now." Clayton helped lower Teresa back onto the bed. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. "What's happening?" he asked. "The stress, the attack, it's triggering early labor." Bessie's hands moved quickly, checking pulse points, pressing carefully against Teresa's belly. "The baby's in distress." "It's too early," Teresa gasped. "It's too early, he won't survive." "How early?" Clayton asked. 8 months, maybe 8.5. Bessie's expression was grim. "He might make it, might not, but if we don't stop the labor," Teresa screamed. It wasn't the scream from earlier, the terror, the panic. This was pain. Pure, visceral, overwhelming pain. "She's hemorrhaging," Bessie said sharply. The wound, the stress reopened the wound. Clayton saw the blood then, spreading across the white sheets beneath Teresa's body. Too much blood, too fast. "What do I do?" he demanded. "Tell me what to do." "There's nothing." Bessie stopped. Her eyes went wide. "Wait, there might be one thing." "What?" "Alpha's blood. If the bond is strong enough, if there's any connection at all between you, your blood might stabilize her. Give her body the strength to heal. Then do it. Take my blood. Take all of it if you have to." "Clayton, you don't understand. This isn't like a normal transfusion. If I'm wrong, if there's no bond, it could kill you both. And if you do nothing?" Bessie looked at Teresa, who was growing paler by the second, her breathing more labored. She dies. The baby dies. Then we have no choice. Clayton was already rolling up his sleeve. Do it. Bessie grabbed a knife and made a clean cut along his forearm. Blood welled immediately dark, almost black. Alpha blood. She collected it in a glass vial, mixed it with something from her supplies, herbs, Clayton thought, and water, then lifted Teresa's head. Drink, she commanded. Teresa's eyes fluttered open. When she saw the vial, understanding flickered across her face. No, she whispered. Clayton, you can't if this bonds us. Drink, he said. Please. Their eyes met. Held. Then Teresa parted her lips and let Bessie pour the mixture into her mouth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Teresa's back arched. Her eyes went wide. A sound tore from her throat, not quite a scream, not quite a gasp, and the room seemed to shift. Clayton felt it like a physical blow, a rush of sensation that started in his chest and radiated outward heat and cold, and something electric that made every nerve ending in his body light up like fire. And then, her. He could feel her. Not just her presence in the room, but her fear, her pain, her desperation, her love for the child she was carrying, her bone-deep exhaustion, her certainty that she was going to die. And underneath it all, buried so deep she might not even know it was there, her love for him. Clayton's knees buckled. What, he gasped. What is this? The bond, Bessie breathed. Oh God, it's activating. Teresa was convulsing now, her hands clutching at the sheets, her body fighting against the pain and the blood loss and the premature labor all at once. But the bleeding was slowing. Clayton could see it, the wounds knitting themselves back together, the color returning to her face. His blood was healing her. And then another wave of sensation hit him. This one different. Smaller. Fainter. A third heartbeat. The baby. He could feel the baby. It's working, Bessie said, her voice shaking. Clayton, it's working. Teresa's convulsions slowed. Her breathing evened out. The pain lines around her eyes began to ease. And through the bond, this impossible, undeniable bond that had just snapped into place, Clayton felt her realization. He knows. He can feel it. He knows the baby is his. Her eyes opened and met his. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have told you. I tried to stay away, tried to protect you from this, but the masked ball, Clayton said. The memory was flooding back now, clear and vivid. 10 months ago. The woman on the balcony. The one who kissed me and then disappeared before I could see her face. Yes, that was you. Yes. Everything made sense now. The recognition he'd felt. The way the wolf had howled when he found her. The absolute certainty that she was his. Because she was. She had been from the beginning. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was raw. Because you're a king. And I'm nobody. And Francisco would have killed us both. Tears were streaming down her face. I thought if I ran far enough, if I disappeared completely, maybe you'd never have to know. Maybe you'd be safe. Safe, Clayton repeated. He laughed a broken, bitter sound. You were dying, and you thought I'd be safe? I thought you'd be free. He crossed to the bed and took her face in his hands. I don't want to be free, he said. I want you. I've wanted you since that night. I just didn't remember until now. Clayton, the baby, our son, he's mine. It wasn't a question, but Teresa nodded anyway. Yes, he's yours. Clayton looked down at her belly, at the curve where his child was growing, and he felt something shift inside him, something fundamental and irreversible. Then I'm claiming you, he said. Both of you, here, now, witnessed. He looked at Bessie, who was staring at them both with wide eyes. You heard me, Clayton said. I'm claiming Teresa Wolfe as my bonded mate. The child she carries is mine. Anyone who challenges that will answer to me. Clayton, the council, can go to hell. He turned back to Teresa. If you'll have me, he said quietly. She was crying openly now, her hands reaching for his. Yes, she whispered. Yes, God, yes. And when he kissed her, when their lips met, and the bond flared bright enough to feel in his bones, Clayton knew that whatever came next, whatever consequences the council tried to impose, he'd burn the world down before he let anyone take her from him again. Chapter 5. The Trial of Two Queens. The announcement was made at dawn. Clayton stood on the balcony overlooking the main courtyard, the morning light catching in his hair, and declared to the assembled household that Teresa Wolfe was his bonded mate, that the child she carried was his heir, that anyone who disputed this would face him personally. The courtyard erupted. Half the crowd cheered the idea of their king bonded to a true Omega was powerful, romantic, the stuff of legends. The other half stood in stunned silence, their faces masks of shock and calculation. In the healing chamber, Teresa listened to the distant roar of voices and felt her stomach twist with dread. "He shouldn't have done that," she whispered. Bessie was checking her bandages, her movements brisk and efficient. "He did what he had to do. The bond is real. Everyone felt it when it activated. The whole keep shook." "That doesn't matter. The council won't accept it. They'll say he's been bewitched. They'll say I manipulated him with Omega pheromones. Let them say it. Clayton is the Alpha King. His word is law." "Not when the law itself is in question." Teresa's hands went to her belly. The baby had settled after the bond formed, his heartbeat strong and steady. But she could still feel the ghost of that terrible pain, the certainty that she was losing him. "Bessie, what happens now?" The healer was quiet for a moment. Then, "Now the council demands proof." The summons came 3 hours later. A formal scroll delivered by Earl Foster himself, rolled with a black ribbon the color of challenge. Clayton was to present himself and his claimed mate before the full council at sunset. They would hear testimony, review evidence, render judgment. Clayton read the scroll twice, then crumpled it in his fist. "They can't do this," Vince said from across the war room. "You're the king. You've claimed her. By law. By law, I should have declared my intent to bond before conception." Clayton interrupted. "I didn't. Which means they can argue the child was illegitimate at the time of conception and remains illegitimate now. That's insane. That's politics." Clayton threw the crumpled scroll into the fire. "They're going to force a trial. Public. Official. And if I can't prove beyond doubt that the child is mine and that the bond is legitimate." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. "There's more," Vince said carefully. "I've been hearing rumors about another woman." Clayton's head snapped up. "What woman?" "Lady Katie Solomon, daughter of Lord Solomon from the eastern provinces. Apparently she's been in residence here for the past month." "I know who Katie is. What about her?" "She's claiming she's pregnant. With your child." The words hit Clayton like a physical blow. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Vince's expression was troubled. "She says you bedded her 2 months ago during the Eastern Summit. She has witnesses who saw you leave the banquet together. She has a physician's examination confirming pregnancy." "I never," Clayton stopped, his mind racing. 2 months ago, the Eastern Summit. He remembered the banquet, remembered drinking too much wine, remembered waking the next morning with a pounding headache and gaps in his memory. But he thought it was just the wine. What if it wasn't? "This is a setup," he said. "Someone is orchestrating this. Maybe. But if Katie presents her claim before the council tonight, then I'll have 2 women claiming to carry my heir, and the council will have to determine which claim is legitimate." Clayton's jaw tightened. "Where is Katie now?" "In the guest wing. Under guard, apparently." "Harvey's orders." "Of course. Harvey would want her secured, controlled, ready to present at exactly the right moment for maximum political impact. I need to talk to her." "Clayton, now." Katie Solomon was beautiful. That was the first thing Clayton noticed when he entered her chambers. She had honey-colored hair that fell in perfect waves, pale blue eyes, and a delicate porcelain complexion that practically glowed in the afternoon light. She was also visibly pregnant. Not as far along as Teresa, maybe 4 months, if he had to guess, but the curve of her belly was unmistakable beneath the elegant blue gown she wore. She rose when he entered, her movements graceful, and dipped into a perfect curtsy. "My king," she said, her voice soft and musical. "I wondered when you would come." Clayton closed the door behind him. "Is it true, what you're claiming? That I carry your child?" Katie's hand went to her belly. "Yes, it's true. I don't remember." "I know. You were quite drunk that night. I tried to dissuade you, but you were insistent." Her eyes were downcast, her cheeks flushed with what looked like embarrassment. "I should have refused more firmly. But you're the king, and I I didn't think it was my place to deny you. Everything about her words, her posture, her tone, it all suggested a young woman who had been compromised by a powerful man and was now dealing with the consequences. But something felt wrong. Why didn't you tell me? Clayton asked. Why wait until now? I was afraid. I'm not bonded to you. I have no claim. I thought if I stayed quiet, perhaps my father could arrange a marriage for me quickly enough that the child could be passed off as my husband's. She looked up at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. But then I heard about the Omega, about you claiming her and her child, and I realized if you would claim her bastard, perhaps you would claim mine as well. He's not a bastard. He's my son. So you say, but can you prove it? Clayton's hands curled into fists. Can you prove yours is mine? I can prove we lay together. I have witnesses. I have medical records showing conception occurred approximately 2 months ago, which matches the timeline of the summit. Katie's voice was still soft, still sad, but there was steel beneath it now. What proof do you have that the Omega's child is yours? Her word? A bond that formed conveniently after she was brought to your keep? The bond is real. Omega bonds can be manufactured, induced through blood magic and pheromone manipulation. Katie took a step closer. I'm not saying she did that deliberately. Perhaps she was desperate. Perhaps she truly believed it was the only way to save herself and her child. But that doesn't make it legitimate. Clayton stared at her, his mind spinning. Everything she was saying it was exactly what the council would argue. Exactly the ammunition they needed to delegitimize his claim to Teresa. Who put you up to this? He asked quietly. Katie blinked. I'm sorry? This performance, these accusations. Who's pulling your strings? Harvey? Your father? Her face flushed with anger. No one is pulling my strings. I'm here because you got me pregnant and I deserve recognition for that. For my child to have his birthright. His? The physicians say it's a boy. Her hand moved protectively over her belly. Your firstborn son. Or have you forgotten that under Northern law, the first male heir inherits the throne? Clayton's blood went cold. She was right. If her child was born before Teresa's, if he was proven to be Clayton's, then, by law, he would be the rightful heir, even if Teresa's child was also Clayton's. This is a nightmare, Clayton muttered. No, Katie said quietly. This is the consequence of your actions. Both of us are pregnant with your children. Both of us deserve your protection. The council will simply have to decide which of us has the stronger claim. The council chamber was packed. Not just the 12 lords who normally occupied the seats, but their advisors, their families, their allies. Every person of influence in Wolfcrest Keep had crowded into the circular room to witness what was already being called the trial of two queens. Clayton entered first, taking his place at the head of the table. He wore full formal attire, black leather and silver clasps, the sigil of his house emblazoned on his chest. He looked every inch the king. He felt like a man walking to his execution. Teresa entered next, escorted by Bessie. She wore a simple dress of deep green that Bessie had found for her, and her dark hair had been braided back from her face. She looked pale but composed, her hand resting on her swollen belly. When their eyes met across the room, Clayton felt the bond flare between them, warm, steady, undeniable. Katie entered last. She wore pale blue silk that made her look ethereal, almost angelic. Her pregnancy was less obvious than Teresa's, but still visible. She walked with her head high and her father at her side, Lord Roberto Buck, a powerful Eastern lord with significant influence on the council. The room fell silent as Harvey Coleman rose to his feet. My lords, he began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. We are gathered to address a matter of grave importance. 2 women claim to carry the king's child. Both seek recognition, both seek legitimacy, and both cannot be queen. He gestured to Katie. Lady Katie Solomon presents her claim first. She states that she lay with the king 2 months past, during the Eastern Summit. She has witnesses to corroborate. She has medical evidence of conception. And she carries a male child, the king's firstborn son. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harvey turned to Teresa. The woman called Teresa Wolf presents a different claim. She states that she lay with the king 10 months past, at a gathering between territories. She offers no witnesses, no corroboration. Only the word of the king himself, and a bond that formed after she arrived at this keep. More murmurs, louder now. The council must determine, Harvey continued, which claim is legitimate, which child is truly the king's heir, and which woman, if either, will stand beside him as queen. He sat down. Lord Roberto stood immediately. I call Lady Katie to testify. Katie stepped forward, her movements graceful and controlled. She placed her hand over her heart in the traditional gesture of oath-taking. I swear by the old gods and the wolf spirits that I speak only truth, she said clearly. Tell us what happened, Roberto prompted. 2 months ago, I attended the Eastern Summit with my father. There was a banquet on the second night. The king was in attendance. Katie's voice was steady, her gaze fixed on the middle distance. He approached me, asked me to walk with him. We went to the gardens, and she paused, her cheeks flushing. He kissed me. One thing led to another. We spent the night together. Did you consent? I didn't refuse. He's the king. How could I refuse? Angry murmurs from some quarters. Sympathetic ones from others. And when did you discover you were with child? Roberto asked. 3 weeks later. I was frightened. I didn't know what to do. My father suggested I come here, to the capital, to seek the king's protection. And has the king offered that protection? Katie's eyes finally moved to Clayton. Not yet, but I hope he will. For our son's sake. Roberto sat down, looking satisfied. Harvey turned to Clayton. My king? Do you wish to respond? Clayton stood slowly. Every eye in the room was on him. I don't remember that night, he said bluntly. I remember the banquet. I remember drinking. I don't remember leaving with anyone. I certainly don't remember. He gestured vaguely. You were quite intoxicated, Katie said softly. It's understandable that the details are hazy. Convenient, Clayton said. That I can't remember, and you're the only witness. There are others who saw us leave together. Who? Katie nodded to a man standing near the back of the room. Clayton recognized him, Jimmy Frazier, one of Roberto's household guard. I saw them, Jimmy said. In the gardens. They were close, intimate. Another nod, this time to a young woman. I saw the king entering Lady Katie's chambers that night, she said. Near midnight. Clayton's jaw tightened. That proves nothing. I could have been checking on any number of guests. In the middle of the night? Harvey's eyebrow rose. Alone? Without your own guard? Clayton had no answer for that. Harvey turned to Teresa. And what of you? What evidence do you present? Teresa stepped forward. Her hand was shaking, but her voice was steady. I was at a different gathering, 10 months ago, a peace summit between northern and southern territories. Everyone wore masks, it was tradition. I danced with a man. We talked. She swallowed. We spent one night together. I didn't know who he was until the next morning when I saw him without his mask. And you're certain it was the king? Yes, but you have no witnesses. No one who saw you together. We were masked. That was the point. Convenient, Roberto said, echoing Clayton's earlier word. It's the truth, Teresa said. The truth is, Roberto said coldly, that you're a branded Omega who escaped from Francisco Meyer. You were desperate, dying. You concocted a story about a child and a bond to secure the king's protection. That's not. You manipulated him with your Omega nature. Made him believe he had some connection to you, when in reality, you're nothing but a frightened runaway, clinging to the first powerful man who showed you mercy. Teresa's face went white. Clayton was on his feet, the alpha command radiating from him so powerfully that several people in the room actually stepped back. Watch your tongue, he said, and his voice was death itself. Roberto didn't flinch. I speak only what half this room is thinking. The Omega has no proof, no witnesses, only a bond that formed suspiciously after her arrival, and a king too noble to abandon a woman in distress. He turned to the council. My lords, the choice is clear. Lady Katie has evidence, witnesses, medical documentation. The Omega has nothing but pretty words and pheromones. She has me, Clayton said. She has the bond, and she has the truth. Then prove it, Harvey said quietly. prove that the child she carries is yours, and not some southern warlord's bastard she's trying to pass off as royal blood." The room went silent. Clayton looked at Teresa, saw the fear in her eyes, the certainty that she was about to lose everything, and then he had an idea. "There is a way," he said slowly, "to prove paternity beyond any doubt." Harvey leaned forward. "What way?" "Blood magic, ancient magic from the old bloodlines." Clayton looked at Bessie, who was standing against the wall. The head healer would know of it. All eyes turned to Bessie. She looked startled, then thoughtful. "There is a ritual," she said carefully. "Very old, very rarely performed. It requires a sample of the father's blood and the unborn child's. If they share bloodline, the samples will react, merge. If they don't, they'll reject each other." "Can it be done safely?" Clayton asked. "For the father, yes. For the child," Bessie hesitated. "There's risk. The ritual requires drawing blood from the womb. It's dangerous at any stage of pregnancy, but especially this late." Teresa's hand went to her belly protectively. "How much risk?" Clayton asked. 5% chance of miscarriage. Maybe 10. The room erupted in whispers. "You can't ask her to do that," Katie said, her voice shocked. "You can't risk an unborn child's life just to prove." "I'll do it," Teresa said. Everyone turned to stare at her. "Teresa." "No," Clayton started. "I'll do it," she repeated, louder now. "Because I know the truth. I know this child is yours, and I won't let them take him from us, because I'm too afraid to prove it." She looked at Katie. "Will you submit to the same test?" Katie's face went pale. That's not necessary. I have witnesses." "Then prove it," Teresa said, throwing Roberto's words back at her. "Prove beyond any doubt that your child is the king's. Or are you afraid of what the test might reveal?" Katie's mouth opened, closed. She looked at her father, who looked at Harvey, who looked at the council. "The Omega makes a fair point," Noel Castro said slowly. "If we're testing one claim, we should test both." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Katie looked trapped. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll do it. But when the test proves my child is the king's firstborn son, I expect full recognition." "Agreed," Harvey said. He looked at Bessie. "Can you perform this ritual for both women?" Bessie nodded grimly. "I'll need time to prepare. The ritual requires rare components. Moonblood root, silver sage, essence of starlight." "How long?" 2 days, maybe 3. "Then we reconvene in 3 days," Harvey declared. "Both women will submit to the blood test. The results will determine paternity, legitimacy, and succession." He banged his staff against the floor. "This council is adjourned." That night, Clayton sat with Teresa in the healing chamber. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "Yes, I did. It's the only way to end this." Teresa looked down at her belly. "I'm sorry for bringing this chaos into your life." "You didn't bring chaos. You brought truth." Clayton took her hand. "But the risk?" "I know the risk. I'm willing to take it." "I'm not sure I am." She squeezed his hand. "Then it's good that it's my choice, not yours." They sat in silence for a moment. "Do you think Katie is lying?" Teresa asked. "I don't know. I genuinely don't remember that night. But something feels wrong about all of this. Too convenient. Too coordinated." "Harvey," Teresa said. "He's behind it. I'd bet my life on it." "Why?" "Because you claiming me disrupts his plans. He probably had Katie lined up as the perfect political match. Eastern Alliance, noble bloodline, biddable. And then I showed up and ruined everything." She smiled without humor. "He's trying to salvage the situation. By putting you both on trial, by making you choose, and hoping you'll choose the politically advantageous option." Clayton lifted her hand to his lips. "I've already chosen." "I know, but will it be enough?" Neither of them had an answer for that. Chapter 6. The Omega's Sacrifice. The first day of preparation passed in tense silence. Bessie worked in the healing chamber, grinding rare herbs and murmuring incantations over silver bowls. The ritual she was preparing was ancient, older than the kingdom itself, older than the written laws that governed wolf society. It came from a time when magic was commonplace and bloodlines were sacred. Teresa watched her work, one hand resting on her belly. Will it hurt? She asked. Bessie didn't look up from the mortar she was grinding. Yes. The baby? I'll do everything I can to protect him. But I won't lie to you, there's always a chance something goes wrong. The needle has to pierce the womb. If it nicks the wrong vessel, if the child moves at the wrong moment. I understand. Bessie finally looked at her. Do you? Because once we start, we can't stop. The ritual demands completion, or the magic backlashes. I've seen it happen once before. The mother survived. The child didn't. Teresa's hand tightened on her belly. If I don't do this, they'll never accept him. They'll always question, always wonder. He'll spend his whole life fighting for legitimacy. And if the test kills him, then at least I'll die knowing I tried to give him a future. Teresa's voice was steady, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I've spent 8 months running, hiding, terrified every moment that Francisco would find me, that he'd hurt my baby before he even had a chance to live. I won't spend the rest of my life hiding from the council's doubts too. Bessie studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded and went back to her work. On the second day, Clayton received an unexpected visitor. He was in the war room reviewing defensive positions. Francisco still hadn't made another move, but Clayton knew it was only a matter of time when Vince announced that Katie Solomon was requesting an audience. She's alone? Her father is with her, but she asked to speak with you privately. Clayton's instincts prickled. Bring her in, but stay close. Vince nodded and left. A moment later, Katie entered. She looked different than she had in the council chamber, less composed. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands twisting in the fabric of her dress. Thank you for seeing me, she said quietly. Clayton gestured to a chair. What do you want? She sat, then immediately stood again, too agitated to remain still. I need to tell you something. About the night about the summit. I'm listening. You were drunk. That part was true, but... She took a shaky breath. You didn't approach me. I approached you. Clayton went very still. Explain. My father told me to. He said the kingdom needed a strong alliance with the East, that you were unattached, available, that if we could. She wrapped her arms around herself. He gave me something to put in your wine, to make you more receptive. He drugged me. Yes, Katie's voice was barely above a whisper. And it worked. You followed me to the gardens. We kissed. But when we got to my chambers, she looked away. You passed out. You never actually. We never. The words hung in the air like a blade. Then the child you're carrying, Clayton said slowly. It's not mine. No. Whose is it? Katie's face crumpled. Jimmy Fraser. My father's guard. We've been involved for months. When I realized I was pregnant, I panicked. I told my father, and she laughed bitterly. He saw an opportunity. If we could make people believe the child was yours, if we could time it right, he could force a political marriage. Secure Eastern influence in the royal house. Yes. Clayton's hands curled into fists. The betrayal not just of him, but of Teresa, of the entire process was staggering. Why are you telling me this now? Because I can't go through with it. Katie's voice broke. The blood test, when Bessie performs it, everyone will know the truth. The child won't react to your blood. And then what? My father will be exposed. I'll be executed for perjury. My baby. She pressed her hands to her belly. My baby will die because of my father's ambition and my cowardice. You could have refused. Could I? You're a king. You don't know what it's like to be powerless, to have your whole life controlled by men who see you as nothing but a political asset. Tears were streaming down her face now. I've been terrified since the moment I realized what my father was planning. And when I saw that Omega saw how you looked at her, how you fought for her, I realized you'd never look at me that way. You'd never fight for me, because this baby isn't yours and I'm not. She couldn't finish. Clayton felt his anger warring with something else. Pity, maybe. Katie was a victim too, in her own way, trapped by circumstance and patriarchal control, just as surely as Teresa had been trapped by Francisco. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. Mercy. For my child. He didn't choose this. He's innocent. Katie actually knelt before him. Please, let me withdraw my claim before the test. Let me say I was mistaken, that I misremembered. I'll take whatever punishment you decree, but please don't let my baby pay for my father's crimes. Clayton looked down at her. At this frightened young woman who'd been used as a pawn in someone else's game. Where is your father now? In his chambers. He doesn't know I'm here. And Jimmy? He wants to marry me. He loves me. But my father would never allow it. He's not noble enough. Clayton was quiet for a moment, thinking, here's what's going to happen, he said finally. Tomorrow, when the council convenes, you're going to tell them the truth. All of it. Your father's scheme, the drugging, Jimmy, everything. Katie's face went white. But my father will kill me. Your father will be arrested the moment you start speaking. I'll have guards waiting. Clayton's voice was hard. And then you're going to marry Jimmy, publicly, with my blessing. The child will be legitimate and protected under my law. You would do that? After what I tried to do to you? You didn't try to do anything. Your father did. You were just caught in the middle. He helped her to her feet. But Katie? If you lie to me again, if you try to manipulate this situation one more time, there will be no mercy. Do you understand? She nodded, tears still streaming. Thank you, thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Teresa. She's the one who demanded both tests. If she hadn't, you might have gotten away with it. Katie flinched. I owe her an apology. Yes, you do. That night, Clayton told Teresa what Katie had revealed. Her reaction surprised him. I knew, she said simply. You knew? Not the details. But I knew she was lying. The way she spoke about you, about that night, it was too rehearsed. Too perfect. Teresa shifted in the bed, trying to find a comfortable position. I'm glad she told the truth. For her sake, and the baby's. You're not angry? I'm furious, but not at her. Teresa's eyes were hard. At her father, at Harvey. At every man who's ever used a woman as a game piece, and then punished her when the game didn't go the way they wanted. Clayton sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. Tomorrow, when the council convenes, it's going to be chaos. Roberto will be arrested. Harvey will scramble to distance himself. The whole political landscape will shift. Good. Let it shift. But that means the focus will be entirely on our test. On proving our child is mine. I know. Teresa. He struggled for words. If something goes wrong, if the ritual damages the baby, then we'll deal with it. Together. She squeezed his hand. I trust Bessie. I trust you. And I trust that our son is strong enough to survive this. How can you be so calm? Because being terrified won't change anything. The test happens tomorrow whether I'm calm or not. She smiled slightly. Besides, I've survived worse. I survived Francisco. I survived the Grey March. I can survive a needle. Clayton lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. You're the strongest person I've ever met. I'm the most stubborn person you've ever met. There's a difference. They sat together in comfortable silence until Teresa's eyes started to drift closed. Stay with me, she murmured. Tonight, I don't want to be alone. Clayton stretched out beside her on the narrow bed, careful not to jostle her injuries. She curled into him, her back against his chest, his arm draped protectively over her belly. He felt the baby kick against his palm, strong, defiant, already fighting. Like his mother, Clayton thought. He stayed awake long after Teresa fell asleep, listening to her breathing, feeling the steady rhythm of 2 heartbeats, hers and their son's, and praying to gods he barely believed in that tomorrow wouldn't take either of them from him. The council chamber was even more crowded on the 3rd day. Word had spread about Katie's confession she'd done it privately to Clayton, but rumors had a way of leaking in a place like this. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when Lord Roberto was confronted. Clayton sat at the head of the table, his face unreadable. Katie stood beside her father, pale but determined. Jimmy Fraser was there too, positioned near the guards at Clayton's silent instruction. My lords, Harvey began, but Clayton held up a hand. Before we proceed with the blood test, Lady Katie has something she wishes to say. All eyes turned to Katie. She took a deep breath. I lied to this council. My child is not the king's. I was never intimate with him. My father drugged the king's wine and orchestrated the entire deception to force a political marriage. The room erupted. Roberto was on his feet instantly. She's hysterical, she doesn't know what she's saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, Katie said, her voice stronger now. You gave me a powder to put in his wine. You told me what to say, how to act. You coached the witnesses. All of it was a lie. You ungrateful. Roberto reached for her, but guards were already moving. They seized him by both arms, hauling him away from Katie even as he sputtered protests and threats. Lord Roberto Buck, Clayton said, his voice cutting through the chaos. You are charged with conspiracy, fraud, and assault against the crown. You will be held pending trial. You can't do this. I'm a lord of the realm. You drugged your king. You manipulated your daughter. You lied to this council. Clayton's eyes were cold. Be grateful I'm giving you a trial at all. Roberto was dragged from the chamber, still protesting. The room slowly quieted. Harvey looked shaken, whether because he'd genuinely been fooled or because his co-conspirator had been exposed. Clayton couldn't tell. Well, Harvey said finally, that simplifies matters. It does, Clayton agreed. There is only one claim now, one test to perform. He looked at Teresa, who stood with Bessie near the door. Are you ready? She nodded. Bessie had set up the ritual in the center of the chamber. A silver bowl, carved runes, candles burning with blue flame, herbs that filled the air with a sharp, medicinal scent. Teresa approached slowly, her hand on her belly. Lie down, Bessie instructed, gesturing to a low table that had been prepared. Teresa did, her movements awkward with pregnancy. Bessie arranged her carefully, then looked at Clayton. I need your blood first. Clayton rolled up his sleeve and held out his arm. Bessie made a small cut precise, professional, and collected several drops of blood in a glass vial. The blood was dark, almost black, alpha blood. Then Bessie turned to Teresa. This will hurt. I'm sorry. I know. Bessie picked up a long, thin needle. Silver. Inscribed with runes that seemed to glow in the candlelight. The room held its collective breath. Bessie placed one hand on Teresa's belly, feeling for position. He's here, she murmured. Low and left. I'll need to go through the abdominal wall, through the uterine muscle, and into the amniotic fluid. Teresa's hand found Clayton's. He squeezed it. Ready? Bessie asked. Teresa nodded. The needle went in. Teresa's entire body went rigid. Her hand crushed Clayton's. A sound escaped her throat, high, thin, agonized. Almost, Bessie murmured. Almost there. She withdrew the needle slowly. On the end was a single drop of fluid, tinged faintly pink, fetal blood. Bessie transferred it carefully to a second vial, then added 3 drops of the herb mixture. Then she held both vials, Clayton's blood and the baby's blood, over the silver bowl. By the old blood and the old magic, she intoned. Let truth be revealed. She poured both vials into the bowl simultaneously. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the blood began to move. It swirled, separated, reached across the bowl toward each other like living things. And where they met, they didn't mix. They merged. The 2 samples became one, glowing faintly with a golden light that filled the bowl and spilled over the edges. The room gasped. Blood calls to blood, Bessie said quietly. Father to son. The child is Clayton's. There can be no doubt. The golden light flared once, brilliant and blinding, then faded. In the bowl, a single drop of merged blood remained, still glowing softly. Teresa was crying. Clayton was staring at the bowl, overwhelmed. Their son, proven beyond any doubt, legitimate, protected. Let the record show, Harvey said, and his voice was strained, that the child carried by Teresa Wolfe is the acknowledged heir of King Clayton Mendez. The claim is legitimate. Cheers erupted from half the room, but Clayton barely heard them. He was focused on Teresa, who was still lying on the table, her face pale, her breathing shallow. Teresa, her eyes fluttered. Tired, she whispered. So tired. Bessie was examining her abdomen, her expression growing alarmed. She's bleeding, internally. The needle must have nicked. Fix it, Clayton said. Do whatever you have to. I'm trying, but the damage, the stress, her body can't. Teresa's hand found his again. Clayton, she said, and her voice was fading. If something happens, nothing's happening, you're going to be fine. Promise me. Promise you'll protect him, our son. I promise. But you're going to be here to protect him yourself. Her eyes closed. Theresa. Bessie was working frantically, pressing herbs against Teresa's abdomen, murmuring healing spells. But the blood was spreading, staining her dress, pooling on the table. Too much blood. I need Alpha's blood, Bessie said desperately. Like before. It's the only thing that might. Clayton was already cutting his arm open. Take it. Take all of it. Bessie collected his blood, mixed it with the herbs, poured it between Teresa's lips. Nothing. No response. No healing. No bond flare. Why isn't it working? Clayton demanded. I don't know. It should. The bond is strong enough. Unless the bond couldn't heal damage to the womb. Couldn't protect both mother and child simultaneously. The baby, Clayton said suddenly. It's protecting the baby instead of her. Bessie's eyes widened. The Omega instinct. She's channeling all the healing to the child. Her body is prioritizing his survival over hers. Then make her stop. Tell her to. I can't. It's not conscious. It's biology. Her Omega nature won't let her. Teresa. Clayton leaned close, putting every ounce of alpha command into his voice. Listen to me. You need to heal yourself. Now. That's an order. Still nothing. Her heartbeat was slowing. The monitors Bessie had attached were showing dropping vital signs. She was dying, and there was nothing he could do. If you're holding your breath hoping Noel survives, please hit subscribe if you haven't. Don't be someone who roots for miracles but won't click a button to support them. Chapter 7. The Trueborn's Cry. Clayton refused to let go of her hand. Bessie was still working, still trying every healing technique she knew, but her movements were becoming more frantic, more desperate. The blood wasn't stopping. Teresa's skin was growing colder. My king, Vince said quietly from behind him. Perhaps you should. Don't. Clayton's voice was raw. Don't tell me to leave her. The council chamber had emptied. Most of the lords had fled when the blood started, unable to stomach the sight. Only a handful remained. Harvey, standing pale and silent in the corner. Noel, his face grim. Earl, looking genuinely distressed. And Katie, who stood near the door with tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. This is my fault. If I hadn't forced the test. It's not your fault, Clayton said without looking at her. It's mine. I should never have agreed to this. Should never have risked. Teresa's body convulsed. Bessie's hands moved to her belly, pressing, feeling. Her eyes went wide. The baby, she breathed. He's coming. What? The trauma triggered labor. Full labor. He's coming now. It's too early. I know. But her body is shutting down. If we don't deliver him now, we lose them both. Clayton looked at Teresa's unconscious face. At the woman who had survived Francisco, survived the Grey March, survived being stabbed and left to die only to be killed by a test meant to protect her. Save him, he said. Whatever it takes. Save our son. Bessie nodded grimly and began issuing orders to the 2 apprentice healers who had appeared at her side. The next 20 minutes were the longest of Clayton's life. He watched as they worked on Teresa's unconscious body, performing an emergency procedure he didn't fully understand. Cutting. Blood. So much blood. Teresa didn't move, didn't make a sound. And then, a cry. Small, weak, but unmistakably alive. One of the apprentices lifted a tiny, bloody form from Teresa's body. It's a boy, she said. Clayton's son. He was so small. Impossibly small. His skin was pale and waxy, his limbs thin and fragile. But his lungs were working, his tiny fists were clenched, and when the apprentice cleaned the fluid from his mouth, he cried again, louder this time. Angry at being pulled from the warmth too early. Angry at the cold and the light and the pain. Good, Clayton thought. Be angry. Fight. Bessie wrapped the baby in soft cloth and brought him to Clayton. He's early. Too early. His lungs aren't fully developed. He'll need constant care, warmth, feeding every hour. She placed the tiny bundle in Clayton's arms. But he's alive, and he's strong. Clayton looked down at his son. The baby's eyes were closed, his face scrunched in displeasure. He had dark hair like Teresa's, and when his tiny hand escaped the blanket and waved aimlessly, Clayton caught it with one finger, the baby's fingers wrapped around his, and Clayton felt his heart crack open. "Hello," he whispered. "I'm your father." The baby's crying quieted slightly, as if he recognized the voice. Behind them, Teresa lay still and silent on the table. The apprentices were working on her, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to stabilize her. But Clayton could see the truth in Bessie's eyes when she looked at him. Teresa was dying. "Let me see her," he said. Bessie hesitated, then nodded. Clayton approached the table, his son cradled carefully in one arm. He looked down at Teresa's pale face, at the dark circles under her eyes, at the blood that stained everything. "You did it," he told her, even though she couldn't hear. "You gave him life. You protected him. You're the bravest person I've ever known." Her chest rose and fell, barely. "But you can't leave me yet. We made a promise, remember? To protect him together. I can't do this alone." His voice broke. "Please, come back, please." Nothing. The baby in his arms squirmed and let out a thin wail, and something shifted in the room. It was subtle at first, a change in the air pressure, a vibration that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The candles flickered. The runes carved into the silver bowl began to glow again. Bessie's head snapped up. "What?" the baby cried again. And this time, the sound wasn't weak. It wasn't thin. It was powerful. The cry echoed through the chamber like a shockwave. The windows rattled. The stone floor trembled. And every wolf in the keep, every single one, from the guards on the walls to the servants in the kitchens, felt it in their bones. A command, primal, absolute. Live. The baby was commanding his mother to live. Clayton stared at his son in shock. The child's eyes had opened dark eyes, like Teresa's, and they were fixed on her face with an intensity that should have been impossible for a newborn. "He's a trueborn," Bessie breathed. "Oh God, he's actually a trueborn." The legends were real. A child born of true love between Alpha and Omega. A child with power that transcended normal wolf hierarchy. A child who could command even death itself. The baby cried again, and the sound resonated through the bond between mother and child. Teresa's chest rose sharply. Her eyes flew open. She gasped a huge, shuddering breath, and her hand flew to her stomach. "My baby, where's my baby?" "Here." Clayton lowered the bundle so she could see. "He's here. He's alive. You're both alive." Teresa's eyes filled with tears. Her hand reached out, trembling, and touched the baby's tiny face. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm your mama." The baby stopped crying instantly. His unfocused eyes turned toward her, and his small hand reached for her finger. The bleeding stopped. Not gradually, not through Bessie's herbs or healing magic. Just stopped. The internal wounds knitted themselves back together. Color flooded back into Teresa's face. Her breathing evened out. The Omega bond and the baby's trueborn power had combined into something unprecedented, something miraculous. Teresa was healing. Rapidly. Bessie checked her vital signs, her hands shaking. "This isn't possible. The damage was too severe. She should be." "I know what I should be," Teresa said, her voice weak but steady. "I'm not." She looked at Clayton, then at their son. "What happened?" "He brought you back," Clayton said simply. "Our son. He commanded you to live, and you did." Teresa stared at the tiny baby in wonder. "He's powerful. He's trueborn." Clayton sat carefully on the edge of the table, keeping their son between them where they could both see him. The legends were real. A child born of a true bond has power beyond any normal wolf. What does that mean? It means he's going to be extraordinary. It means every kingdom in the realm will want to control him. Clayton's jaw tightened. It means we're going to spend the rest of our lives protecting him. Good. Teresa's hand tightened on the baby's blanket. Let them try. We survived, Francisco. We survived the council. We can survive anything. The baby made a small noise, not quite a cry, more like a complaint. He's hungry, Bessie said. She'd recovered from her shock and was back in healer mode. We need to get you both somewhere more comfortable. The baby needs warmth. You need rest. And I need to examine you properly to make sure the healing is complete. But before anyone could move, the door to the council chamber burst open. Vince ran in, his face panicked. "My king, we have a situation." "What now?" "Francisco Meyer. He's at the gates with an army. 2,000 men. He's demanding you return his property." Vince's eyes flicked to Teresa. "He wants her back. And he says if you don't surrender her within the hour, he'll burn Wolfcrest to the ground." The room went silent. Teresa's face went white. Her arms tightened around the baby protectively. "He can't have her," Clayton said flatly. "He's claiming legal right. She's branded. Under Southern law, she belongs to him." "She belongs to no one. She's my bonded mate, the mother of my heir. He says the bond is irrelevant, that she was his property before you claimed her, which makes the bond invalid." Vince looked grim. "And he has 4 Southern warlords backing his claim. They're calling it theft of chattel." Clayton stood, fury rolling off him in waves. "She's not chattel. She's a person. We know that, but Francisco doesn't care. And the Southern warlords see an opportunity to challenge Northern authority." Vince paused. "My king, we can fight them. Our walls are strong. Our soldiers are ready. But 2,000 against our garrison. We'd be outnumbered 3-1, Clayton finished. "Yes." Clayton looked at Teresa, who was staring at him with wide, terrified eyes. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't even think about giving me back to him. I won't. He'll kill you. He'll kill everyone here just to get to me. Let him try." "Clayton, no." He crossed to her and cupped her face in his hands. "I told you before, you're mine. This baby is mine, and I will burn the world down before I let anyone take you from me." He turned to Vince. "Mobilize every soldier we have. Arm the servants if you need to. Tell Francisco Meyer that if he wants a war, he'll have one." "My king, do it." Vince nodded and ran from the room. Teresa was crying now, her tears falling on the baby's blanket. "You're going to get yourself killed for me." "No," Clayton said. "I'm going to win. For you, for him, for us." He kissed her forehead. "Stay here with Bessie. Keep our son safe. I'll handle Francisco." "How?" Clayton smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "The same way I've handled every threat to my kingdom. With overwhelming force and absolute certainty." He started toward the door. "Clayton," Teresa called. He turned. "Come back to us. Always." The battlements of Wolfcrest were crowded with soldiers when Clayton reached them. He could see Francisco's army spread across the snow like a dark stain. 2,000 men, wolves and humans both, armed to the teeth and arranged in precise military formation. At the front, mounted on a massive black horse, was Francisco Meyer himself. He was a large man, barrel-chested and scarred, with dead eyes and a smile that promised cruelty. The crescent moon brand, his personal sigil, was emblazoned on his armor. He saw Clayton on the wall and raised his voice to carry across the distance. "Clayton Mendez, Alpha King of the Northern Reach, I have come for what is mine." "You have nothing of mine," Clayton called back, "and I have nothing of yours." "The Omega. She belongs to me. She is branded with my mark. Return her, and I will leave peacefully. She belongs to herself, and she stays here." Francisco's smile widened. "I was hoping you'd say that. I've been wanting an excuse to teach the North a lesson about respecting Southern property rights. She's not property, she's my bonded mate. A bond formed under duress is not legitimate. You stole her from me. I'm simply reclaiming what was taken. She ran from you. She chose freedom over your cage. She chose nothing. Omegas don't get to choose." Francisco's voice hardened. "Last chance, Clayton. Give her to me, or I take her by force. And when I do, I'll make sure you watch what I do to her for running." The threat hung in the air. Clayton felt the wolf rising inside him, felt the fury building to a breaking point. But before he could respond, he felt something. The bond, flaring. Not with pain or fear, with power. He turned and saw Teresa standing in the doorway to the battlements. She shouldn't have been out of bed. She was still weak, still healing. But she was there, wrapped in a cloak, with their son bundled against her chest. "What are you doing?" Clayton demanded. "You should be resting." "I'm standing with my mate," Teresa said, "and showing Francisco that I'm not his anymore." She walked to the edge of the wall, where Francisco could see her. The warlord's eyes lit up with possessive fury. "There you are," he called. "Come home, little Omega. Come back where you belong." "I am home," Teresa said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried with Omega authority that made every wolf listening go still. "And I belong to no one but myself. You're branded. You're mine. I was never yours. I was your prisoner. There's a difference." She pulled aside her cloak, revealing the baby. "This is my son," she said. "Born free. Born to a father who sees me as an equal, not property. And he will never know the cage you kept me in." The baby, as if on cue, let out a cry. And once again, the power in it shook the walls. Francisco's horse reared. His men stumbled. Even the wolves in his army whined and cowered, because they could all feel it, the trueborn's power, the command in that tiny voice that said, "I am here, I am strong, and you will not harm my family." Francisco stared at the baby, and for the first time, Clayton saw fear flicker across his face. "What is that?" the warlord demanded. "That," Clayton said, stepping forward to stand beside Teresa, "is the future. And you're not part of it." He raised his voice so every soldier in both armies could hear. "Francisco Meyer, you have threatened my mate. You have threatened my heir. You have brought an army to my gates and demanded I surrender what is not yours to take." Clayton's eyes began to glow amber. "I reject your claim. I reject your authority. And I challenge you. Single combat. The old way. Just you and me. Winner takes all." The crowd roared, Northern soldiers cheering, Southern soldiers murmuring in surprise. Francisco's face twisted with rage. "You think you can beat me in a fair fight? I know I can." "Then you're a fool. I've killed better men than you. You've killed unarmed men and helpless women. You've never faced an alpha king in his prime defending what he loves." Clayton smiled coldly. "But there's always a first time." Francisco was trapped. By Northern and Southern law both. A challenge issued in defense of family could not be refused. If he declined, he'd look weak in front of his own men. "Fine," Francisco snarled. "Single combat. To the death. And when I rip your throat out, I'll take the Omega, and that whelp both. If you can," Clayton said. He turned to Teresa. "Go inside. Stay with Bessie. Don't watch this." "Like hell I won't." Teresa's eyes were fierce. "I watched him hurt me for 6 years. I'm going to watch you end him." Clayton wanted to argue, but the look on her face told him it would be pointless. "Stay behind the walls," he said instead. "I will." He kissed her once hard and fast and full of promise. Then he vaulted over the wall and shifted midair. The black wolf landed in the snow with a force that shook the ground, and the real battle began. Chapter 8. The Bonding. Francisco shifted the moment Clayton hit the ground. The transformation was brutal. Violent bones cracking and reforming with sounds like breaking timber. Where the man had been, a massive wolf now stood. Gray and scarred, with yellow eyes that gleamed with malice. He was bigger than most wolves, but not bigger than Clayton. The black wolf circled, smoke-dark fur rippling over muscle and sinew. His eyes pale green even in wolf form, flecked with burning gold, never left his opponent. The two armies formed a wide circle, giving the combatants space. This was sacred, ancient, a challenge witnessed by both sides, bound by laws older than any kingdom. Francisco attacked first. He lunged with teeth bared, going for Clayton's throat, a killing strike, meant to end things quickly. But Clayton was faster. He twisted aside, letting Francisco's momentum carry him past, then snapped at his hindquarters. Blood sprayed across white snow. Francisco howled and spun, rage overriding strategy. He charged again, this time lower, trying to bowl Clayton over through sheer mass. Clayton met him head-on. The impact when they collided was like thunder. Both wolves went down, rolling through the snow in a tangle of fur and fangs. They broke apart, circled, clashed again. From the battlements, Teresa watched with her heart in her throat. She'd seen Francisco fight before, seen him kill. He was vicious, experienced, utterly without mercy. And watching him now, watching those powerful jaws snap inches from Clayton's face, she felt terror like ice water in her veins. He could lose. He could die. The baby stirred against her chest, making small, distressed sounds. He could feel her fear through the bond. "It's okay," she whispered, though she didn't believe it. "Your father is strong. He'll win." But what if he didn't? What if she'd escaped Francisco, only to watch him kill the man she loved? In the circle, the fight intensified. Francisco had experience and brutality on his side. He fought dirty, going for eyes, for tendons, for any vulnerable spot he could reach. He'd been fighting since he was young, had killed dozens of challengers over the years. But Clayton had something Francisco didn't: purpose. He wasn't fighting for territory or pride. He was fighting for his mate, for his son, for the future he'd promised them both. And that made him unstoppable. Clayton's jaws closed around Francisco's front leg. He bit down hard, felt bone crack, and yanked sideways. Francisco went down with a yelp of pain. Clayton was on him instantly, going for the throat. But Francisco twisted at the last second, and Clayton's teeth scraped across his shoulder instead. Deep gashes, bleeding freely, but not fatal. They separated again, both breathing hard. Francisco was limping now, favoring his injured leg. But his eyes still burned with hate. "You think you've won?" He snarled the words distorted through the wolf's mouth, but still intelligible. "You think she'll ever be free of me? I made her what she is. Every time she closes her eyes, she'll see my face. Every time she flinches at a raised voice, that's my mark on her, not yours." Clayton didn't respond with words. He responded with violence. He hit Francisco like a battering ram, driving him backward, slamming him into the frozen ground. His jaws found Francisco's throat and locked down. Not biting, not yet, holding. Francisco struggled, thrashing, trying to break free. But Clayton's grip was iron, unbreakable, and slowly, deliberately, Clayton began to squeeze. Francisco's struggles grew more frantic, more desperate. On the battlements, Teresa pressed her hand to her mouth. She should feel triumph, should feel satisfaction watching the man who'd tormented her for 6 years finally face justice. But all she felt was a strange, hollow ache, because she knew what came next: death. Francisco was going to die. Clayton would kill him, as was his right by combat law. And Francisco deserved it 1,000 times over for what he'd done to her, to countless other Omegas, to anyone who'd ever been unfortunate enough to fall under his power. But still, "You're not like him," she told Clayton once. "You're better." Was he still better if he became a killer too? The baby cried softly against her chest. And through the bond, that impossible, powerful bond that connected all three of them, Teresa felt Clayton's fury. His righteous rage, his absolute certainty that Francisco needed to die. She also felt something else: doubt, small, barely there, but present. Because Clayton wasn't a murderer, he was a king, a protector, and killing Francisco in hot blood, in front of both armies, in front of his mate and newborn son, would it make him the man Teresa believed he was? Or would it make him just another warlord who solved problems with violence? Teresa made a choice. She opened her mouth and let her Omega voice carry across the battlefield, not loud, but penetrating, impossible to ignore. "Clayton, stop." The black wolf's head jerked up. His jaws were still locked around Francisco's throat. The gray wolf had gone still, either unconscious or accepting death. "Let him go," Teresa said. The crowd murmured in confusion. Clayton shifted back to human form, but kept his hand pressed against Francisco's throat, maintaining the submission hold. He was naked, covered in blood and snow, his chest heaving. "What?" he called up to her. "Let him go. Teresa, he tried to kill you. He tortured you for years. I know what he did." She descended from the battlements carefully, the baby still clutched to her chest. Bessie tried to stop her, but Teresa shook her off. She walked through the circle of soldiers until she stood at the edge of the fighting ground. "I know exactly what he did," she repeated. "And I also know that killing him won't erase any of it. It won't give me back the 6 years he stole. It won't heal the scars. He deserves to die. Maybe. Probably." Teresa looked down at Francisco's unconscious wolf form. "But I don't need him to die. I need him to lose. And he already has." She gestured to the armies watching. Everyone here just watched you defeat him in single combat. Watched him beg for mercy with his silence. His own men saw him broken. She looked back at Clayton. If you kill him, he becomes a martyr. His allies will claim you murdered him out of cruelty, that the Northern King is a savage who doesn't respect Southern traditions. But if you spare him, understanding dawned in Clayton's eyes. Then I show mercy, show that the North is civilized, honorable, that we're better than the South's brutality. And you show that you're the kind of king who doesn't need to kill to prove his strength. Teresa's voice softened. The kind of king I want our son to grow up to be. Clayton looked at Francisco, at the broken wolf bleeding in the snow. Every instinct screamed to finish it, to end the threat permanently. But Teresa was right. He was better than this. Clayton stood, stepping back from Francisco's body. He shifted to human form, completely, standing naked and bloodied in the snow, and raised his voice. Francisco Meyer, you challenged my right to my mate, you lost. By the laws of single combat, you forfeit all claim to her and accept exile from the northern territories. He looked at the southern armies. Any warlord who supports him in defying this judgment will be considered an enemy of the crown. Silence. Then, slowly, the southern soldiers began to kneel, not to Francisco, to Clayton. One by one, then in waves, they dropped to their knees in the snow, acknowledging his victory, his authority, his mercy. Francisco's own second-in-command, a scarred beta named Salvador Blevins, stepped forward. We accept your judgment, Alpha King. Francisco Meyer is exile. We will escort him beyond your borders and ensure he does not return. See that you do. Salvador signaled to several soldiers, who moved forward to collect Francisco's unconscious form. They handled him without gentleness, hoisting him between them like a sack of grain. As they carried him away, Francisco's eyes opened. He looked at Teresa one last time. She met his gaze steadily, without fear, without hate, just emptiness. He was nothing to her now. Not a monster, not a captor, just a broken man being carried away to a broken future. And she was free. The realization hit her like a physical force. Free. Truly, completely free. Her knees buckled. Clayton caught her before she fell, wrapping one arm around her waist while being careful not to crush the baby between them. I've got you, he murmured. I know. She leaned into him, shaking. I know you do. The northern soldiers were cheering now, raising weapons and voices in celebration. The southern armies were retreating, carrying their defeated warlord with them. It was over. Bessie appeared with a cloak, draping it over Clayton's shoulders. Both of you need to get inside. Now. Before you freeze to death after surviving everything else. They stumbled back toward the keep together, Clayton still supporting Teresa's weight. The baby somehow had slept through the entire battle. Back in the healing chamber, Bessie examined them both with the efficiency of someone who'd patched up too many warriors to be impressed by blood and bruises. You're lucky, she told Clayton, cleaning a deep gash on his shoulder. He missed the major vessels. You'll have a scar, but you'll live. I've had worse. That's not the point. Bessie's hands were gentle despite her sharp tone. You're a father now. You don't get to be reckless with your life anymore. Clayton looked at Teresa, who was lying in the bed with their son nursing at her breast. The baby had woken hungry and indignant, and watching him feed, watching that tiny, perfect life taking nourishment from the woman Clayton loved, made something in his chest expand painfully. I wasn't being reckless, he said quietly. I was protecting my family. By nearly getting yourself killed. By doing what needed to be done. Bessie sighed. You're as stubborn as she is. That child doesn't stand a chance of being reasonable. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the pain, the lingering adrenaline, Clayton smiled. Good. The world doesn't need more reasonable people. It needs more fighters. The world needs more people who know when to fight and when to show mercy. Bessie finished bandaging his shoulder, which, thankfully, your mate taught you today. She was right. If Teresa hadn't stopped him, if she hadn't called out across that battlefield and reminded him who he wanted to be, he would have killed Francisco, would have torn his throat out and felt justified doing it, and some essential part of himself would have died along with the warlord. Thank you, he said to Teresa. She looked up from the baby, confused. For what? For stopping me. for being wiser than I am. I'm not wiser, I didn't want our son's first memory of his father to be violence. She touched the baby's soft hair. He's trueborn. He's going to be powerful, probably more powerful than either of us. And power without wisdom is just tyranny. Then we'll teach him both, power and wisdom. Together, together. The word hung between them, full of promise. They'd been through so much persecution, betrayal, near death, war, and they'd survived. Not just survived, they'd won. The baby finished nursing and made a small, satisfied sound. Teresa adjusted him carefully, holding him up so Clayton could see his face. He needs a name, she said. Clayton had been thinking about this since the moment his son was born. He'd considered family names, traditional names, names that carried weight and history. But looking at this tiny person, this miracle who had commanded his mother to live, who had made armies kneel with his cry, who represented everything good and pure in a world full of darkness, only one name felt right. Noel, he said. It means born at Christmas, a gift. Teresa's eyes filled with tears. It's perfect. Noel Mendez, trueborn heir of the Northern Reach. Noel, Teresa repeated softly, testing the name. The baby's eyes opened at the sound, dark and unfocused, but already alert. Hello, Noel. Welcome to the world, little love. Bessie cleared her throat. Now that the baby has a name, and you've both survived the day's drama, I'm going to insist on something radical. What? Clayton asked warily. Sleep, both of you, for more than 2 hours consecutively. She pointed at the bed. The baby will wake you when he's hungry. I'll be in the next room if anything goes wrong, but you need rest. But the council can wait, and Francisco's armies are gone. You won. It's over. Bessie's voice softened. You're allowed to rest now, Clayton. The world won't end if you close your eyes for a few hours. Clayton looked at Teresa, who was already fighting to keep her eyes open. At Noel, who had drifted back to sleep in that boneless way only newborns could manage. His family, safe, whole, his. All right, he said. We'll rest. He climbed into the bed beside Teresa, careful not to jostle her or the baby. She curled into him immediately, her head on his shoulder. Noel nestled safely between them. Clayton, she murmured, already half asleep. I love you. It was the first time she'd said it out loud. Clayton's breath caught. I love you too. Good. She yawned. Because you're stuck with me now. Bonded mate. Can't get rid of me. Wouldn't want to. Within minutes, both of them were asleep. And in the space between them, Noel Trueborn, miracle, gift slept too, wrapped in the warmth of his parents' love. For the first time in either Clayton or Teresa's lives, the world was quiet, not silent, not empty, just peaceful. And that peace, hard-won and blood-bought, was more precious than any crown. Chapter 9. The Enemy Revealed. They had 3 days of peace. 3 days where Teresa healed, where Noel grew stronger, where Clayton allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind them. He should have known better. The attack came at dawn on the 4th day. Not an army this time, not soldiers at the gates, something quieter, more insidious. Clayton woke to Teresa screaming. He bolted upright, hand already reaching for the blade he kept beside the bed, but the threat wasn't external. It was Teresa herself. She was convulsing, her body arching off the bed, her hands clawing at her throat. Her eyes were open but unseeing, rolled back white. Teresa! Clayton grabbed her shoulders, trying to hold her still. Bessie! Bessie! The healer burst through the door, took one look, and went pale. Poison, she said. Hold her down. Clayton pinned Teresa's shoulders while Bessie worked frantically, forcing something between her lips, charcoal, maybe, or another neutralizing agent. Teresa choked, gasped, her body fighting the cure as much as the poison. In the cradle beside the bed, Noel began to wail. The sound was piercing, powerful, and every candle in the room flared bright enough to hurt. The baby, Clayton started. Leave him. I need both hands. Bessie was checking Teresa's pulse, her breathing, her pupils. This is wolfsbane, heavy dose. If we don't flush it out in the next 5 minutes. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Clayton had seen wolfsbane poisoning before. It attacked the nervous system, caused seizures, organ failure. Death came quickly, and it came screaming. How? He demanded. How did she ingest it? I don't know. Food? Water? It had to be recent within the last hour. Clayton's mind raced. Teresa had eaten breakfast food brought by the kitchen staff, same as always. Had drunk water from the pitcher beside the bed, the pitcher that had been refilled this morning by. He couldn't remember. Couldn't think past the terror of watching Teresa's life slip away again. Fight, he told her, gripping her hand. You hear me? You fight this. You didn't survive everything else to die from poison in your own bed. Teresa's convulsions were slowing. Her eyes focused briefly. Found his face. Noel, she gasped. Protect Noel. Then her eyes rolled back again. Bessie worked for another agonizing 3 minutes before Teresa's body finally went limp. Not dead, unconscious, breathing, stable. She'll live, Bessie said, wiping sweat from her forehead. But it was close. Too close. Clayton was already on his feet, rage burning through him like wildfire. Who brought her breakfast this morning? One of the kitchen girls. I don't remember which. Find out, now, and bring me Harvey Coleman, my king, now. Bessie ran. Clayton paced the room like a caged wolf, his mind spinning. Poisoning wasn't Francisco's style. He was too direct, too brutal for subtle murder. Which meant this was someone else. Someone inside the keep. Someone with access to Teresa's food. Someone who wanted her dead and was willing to risk exposure to make it happen. Noel's crying had quieted to small, distressed whimpers. Clayton picked him up, cradling him carefully. I know, he murmured. I know you're scared, but your mother's going to be fine. I promise. The baby's dark eyes looked up at him with an intensity that was unnerving in someone so young. Protect her, those eyes seemed to say. Protect us. I will, Clayton said. I will. Harvey arrived 15 minutes later, looking disheveled and confused. My king, I was told there was an emergency. Teresa was poisoned. Harvey's face went carefully blank. What? Wolfsbane. In her food or water. Someone tried to kill her. Clayton's voice was deadly calm. And I want to know who. This is terrible. Unconscionable. We must investigate immediately. We're past investigation. Clayton set Noel back in his cradle and turned to face Harvey fully. I know it was you. The room went silent. Harvey's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation. That's a serious accusation, my king. It's the truth. You orchestrated Katie's false claim. You've been working against me since the moment I claimed Teresa. I have served your house loyally for 40 years. You've served your own ambition. Everything you've done has been about maintaining your power, your influence. And Teresa threatened that. She's an Omega from nowhere. No lineage, no connections, no political value. Harvey's careful mask was cracking. You should have married Katie. Or one of the other noble daughters, I suggested. Someone who could strengthen alliances, secure trade agreements, bring value to the crown. She brought love. She brought an heir. She brought a complication. Harvey's voice hardened. That child, that trueborn, is too powerful. Do you have any idea what the other kingdoms will do when they realize what he is? They'll see him as a threat. They'll unite against us just to eliminate him. Or they'll kneel to him, like Francisco's men did. Francisco was defeated in combat. The other kingdoms won't fall so easily. Harvey took a step closer. I tried to spare you this, Clayton. Tried to give you a manageable wife, a normal heir, a peaceful reign, but you chose her. And now you tried to kill her. I tried to save the kingdom from civil war. Harvey's composure shattered completely. Every kingdom in the realm will want that child. Will try to steal him, control him, use him as a weapon. You've put a target on your entire family, on every person in Wolfcrest. And for what? For an Omega who spent 6 years as another man's whore? Clayton moved so fast Harvey didn't have time to flinch. One moment they were 6 feet apart. The next, Clayton had him by the throat, slammed against the wall hard enough to crack stone. Say that again? Clayton said softly. Please, give me an excuse. Harvey gasped, clawing at Clayton's hand. You can't. I'm council head. You need me. I don't need anyone who poisons my mate. I did it for the kingdom. You did it for yourself, because you were losing control and you couldn't stand it. Clayton tightened his grip. Harvey's face was turning purple. It would be so easy, just a little more pressure, a little more time, and Harvey would be gone, the threat eliminated. But then Teresa's voice, weak but clear, cut through the rage. Clayton, don't. He turned his head. She was awake, propped up on one elbow, her face pale, but her eyes steady. He tried to kill you, Clayton said. I know, but if you kill him, you prove him right. You prove that you're just another violent king who solves problems with murder. She pushed herself to sitting, wincing at the effort. We're better than that, remember? Clayton looked between Teresa and Harvey, still dangling in his grip. Every instinct screamed to finish it, to end the threat permanently. But Teresa was right. Again. He released Harvey, who collapsed to the floor, gasping. You're stripped of your position, Clayton said. Your lands are forfeit. You'll be imprisoned pending formal trial. You'll regret this, Harvey wheezed. When the other kingdoms come for your son, when they tear this keep apart to get to him, you'll wish you'd listened to me. The only thing I regret is trusting you. Clayton gestured to the guards who had appeared in the doorway. Take him to the cells. No visitors. No communication with anyone outside. They hauled Harvey away, still protesting. When the room was finally quiet, Clayton returned to Teresa's side. You should have let me kill him, he said. Probably. But then I'd have to live with loving a killer. She took his hand. This way. I just have to live with loving a very angry king who showed restraint. How do you feel? Like I drank poison. She tried to smile. But alive. Thanks to Bessie. Thanks to your own strength. You keep surviving things that should kill you. It's becoming a habit. Noel made a small sound from his cradle. Teresa's attention immediately shifted. Is he all right? He was crying. He's fine. Worried about you. We both were. Teresa reached for the baby, and Clayton lifted him carefully, placing him in her arms. Noel immediately settled, his small hand curling around her finger. Harvey was right about one thing, Teresa said quietly. The other kingdoms will come for him, for Noel. A trueborn is too valuable, too dangerous, to ignore. Let them come. We'll be ready. Will we? She looked up at him. Clayton, I love you. I love our life, but I'm terrified. Harvey got poison into our chambers, into my food. If someone inside the keep can do that, then we root out everyone who can't be trusted. We rebuild the household from scratch if we have to. And the external threats? The kingdoms Harvey mentioned? Clayton was quiet for a moment. She was right to be afraid. Harvey, for all his treachery, had identified a real problem. A trueborn heir was unprecedented. Every kingdom with ambition would see Noel as either the ultimate weapon or the ultimate threat, and they would come. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. We make alliances, he said finally. Real ones. Not political marriages or trade agreements. We find the kingdoms who are honorable, who respect Omega rights, who would see Noel as an ally rather than a weapon. And the ones who don't? We show them what happens when you threaten the Northern Reach. His voice hardened. We show them that a trueborn protected by parents who would burn the world for him is more dangerous than any army they could raise. Teresa leaned her head against his shoulder, exhausted. I'm so tired of fighting. I know. But I'll keep doing it. For him. For us. We'll do it together, Clayton said. Like we've done everything else. They sat in silence, holding their son between them, and tried not to think about the storm gathering on the horizon. The formal trial of Harvey Coleman took place 3 days later. The evidence was damning. The kitchen girl who'd brought Teresa's breakfast testified that Harvey had intercepted her, said he wanted to add something special for the new mother. She'd thought nothing of it. Harvey was council head, trusted, respected. The wolfsbane had been found in his private chambers, along with correspondence from several southern warlords offering payment for removal of the Omega threat. Harvey had been selling out his own kingdom for gold and promises of continued influence. The council, what remained of it after Roberto's arrest and Harvey's betrayal, voted unanimously for execution. But Clayton, remembering Teresa's words about mercy, offered an alternative. Exile. Permanent, irreversible exile to the frozen wastes beyond the Grey March. stripped of title, lands, wealth. Left to survive on his own in a place where most men didn't last a week. Harvey accepted. Barely. As he was led away, he looked at Clayton one last time. "You think you've won," he said. "But you've only delayed the inevitable. That child will bring ruin to everything you love. And when it happens, remember that I warned you." Then he was gone. Clayton stood in the empty council chamber and wondered if Harvey was right. If loving Teresa, claiming Noelle, choosing family over politics, if all of it had been a mistake that would cost him everything. Then he felt the bond warm, steady, unbreakable, and knew the truth. It didn't matter. Even if the whole world came against them, even if every kingdom united to tear them apart, he would choose them. Every time. Without hesitation. Because some things were worth fighting for. And some bonds were stronger than empires. Please like this video and subscribe if you believe love is worth fighting for, because Teresa and Clayton are about to face their biggest battle yet, and they need witnesses who actually care, not just spectators. Thank you. Chapter 10. The Omega's Legacy. 1 year later, the Great Hall of Wolfcrest was transformed. Banners from a dozen kingdoms hung from the vaulted ceiling, not in conquest, but in alliance. The long tables were laden with food and drink, and the air hummed with conversation in half a dozen languages. It was Noel's first birthday, and Clayton had invited every kingdom in the realm that had shown even the slightest willingness to negotiate in good faith. Some had come out of curiosity, some out of political necessity. Some, like the delegation from the Western Isles led by Queen Marjorie Wilkins, had come because they genuinely wanted to see the trueborn child for themselves. Teresa stood at the edge of the hall, watching the controlled chaos with a mixture of amusement and anxiety. "You look nervous," Bessie said, appearing at her elbow with a cup of wine. "I am nervous. Half these people want to steal my son. The other half want to kill him." Teresa took the wine gratefully, and we invited them all into our home. "It's called diplomacy. It's called madness." Bessie smiled. "Same thing, usually." Across the hall, Clayton was deep in conversation with Queen Marjorie and her advisor. He wore formal regalia, black leather and silver, the wolf sigil prominent on his chest, and he looked every inch the king he was. But when his eyes found Teresa's across the crowd, he smiled. Just for her. The bond flared warm between them. Even after a year, it still surprised her sometimes. The depth of it. The way she could feel his presence even when he was across the keep. The way his emotions bled into hers and hers into his. It should have been invasive, suffocating. Instead, it was comfort, safety, home. "Where's the birthday boy?" Bessie asked. "With Vince. There in the courtyard. Noelle wanted to see the horses." "Of course he did. That child has absolutely no fear." "I know, it's terrifying." Noel had grown impossibly fast over the past year. He was already walking, had taken his first steps at 8 months, and was constantly getting into everything. He had Clayton's stubborn determination and Teresa's sharp intelligence, and the combination was exhausting. He was also showing signs of his true-born power. Small things, mostly. Animals were drawn to him. Plants seemed to grow faster in his presence. And when he cried, which wasn't often the sound, still had that resonant quality that made every wolf in the keep go still and attentive. It would have been frightening if it wasn't so clearly guided by innocence. Noel wasn't manipulating anyone. He was just himself. Powerful, yes, but also sweet and curious and affectionate. He was perfect, and Teresa would die before she let anyone take him from her. "You should mingle," Bessie said. "This is as much your party as his." "I'm terrible at mingling." "You're the queen consort of the Northern Reach. You don't have to be good at it. You just have to show up." Teresa sighed, but started making her way through the crowd. She'd gotten better at this over the past year, learned to navigate court politics, to smile at people she didn't trust, to deflect intrusive questions with grace, but it still felt like wearing armor that didn't quite fit. She was stopped 3 times by various nobles, wanting to offer congratulations or ask pointed questions about Noelle's development. She answered politely, vaguely, and moved on. Then she ran into Queen Marjorie. "Lady Teresa," the Queen said warmly, "I've been hoping to speak with you. Your Majesty." Teresa dipped into a curtsy that still felt awkward after a year of practice. Please, none of that. We're both women navigating impossible situations. That makes us allies, not rivals. Marjorie smiled. I wanted to tell you what you've accomplished here is remarkable. Building alliances, establishing Omega protections, creating a kingdom where power doesn't automatically mean oppression. It gives the rest of us hope. Teresa blinked, surprised. I haven't accomplished anything. Clayton did all the diplomatic work. Clayton is a good king, but you're the reason he became a great one. Marjorie's expression was serious now. Before you, the Northern Reach was just another kingdom. Strong, stable, but unremarkable. Now you're setting an example, showing that Omegas can be partners, not property. That bonds formed in love are stronger than political marriages. I don't know if that's true. It is. I've been ruling the Western Isles for 20 years. I've seen every kind of alliance imaginable, and I've never seen anything like what you and Clayton have. Marjorie lowered her voice. Which is why I wanted to warn you. Teresa's stomach tightened. Warn me about what? There are kingdoms here tonight that smile to your face and plot behind your back. Kingdoms that see your son as a weapon to be acquired or a threat to be eliminated. I know. We've been preparing. I'm not talking about military threats. I'm talking about something more subtle. Marjorie glanced around, ensuring they weren't overheard. There's a coalition forming. 5 kingdoms from the east. They're calling themselves the Sovereign Alliance, and their stated goal is to preserve traditional pack hierarchies, which means they oppose everything you represent. Omega rights, bonding for love, true-born legitimacy. They see you as a threat to the natural order, and they're here tonight? 3 of their 5 leaders are in this room right now, smiling, drinking your wine, celebrating your son's birthday. Marjorie's eyes were grave, and planning how to destroy you the moment they leave. Teresa felt ice settle in her stomach. Why are you telling me this? Because the Western Isles stands with you, and because you deserve to know what's coming. Marjorie squeezed her hand briefly. Watch your back, Teresa, and trust no one you haven't bled with. She drifted away, leaving Teresa standing alone in the crowded hall. Teresa found Clayton an hour later in his private study, reviewing security reports. We have a problem, she said. He looked up immediately, reading the tension in her face. What kind of problem? She told him everything Marjorie had said, about the Sovereign Alliance, about the kingdoms plotting against them even as they pretended friendship. Clayton's expression darkened with each word. I knew some of them couldn't be trusted, he said, but a formal coalition, what do? We can't act against them preemptively, that would make us look paranoid, aggressive. Give them the excuse they need to unite against us. So we just wait for them to strike? No. We build our own alliances. Strengthen ties with kingdoms like the Western Isles. Make it clear that attacking us means attacking multiple kingdoms simultaneously. And if that's not enough, Clayton stood and crossed to her, taking her hands. Then we fight, like we fought everything else, together. Before Teresa could respond, the door burst open. Vince ran in, his face panicked. My king, the baby. Teresa's heart stopped. What about Noel? He's fine. He's not hurt. But you need to see this. Now. They ran, through corridors, downstairs, out into the courtyard where a crowd had gathered. In the center of the crowd, standing in a ring of torchlight, was Noel. And he was glowing. Not metaphorically, actually glowing. Soft golden light radiated from his skin, bright enough to cast shadows but not enough to hurt the eyes. Around him, in a perfect circle, flowers were growing. Not budding, not slowly emerging. Growing. Fast. Impossibly fast. Roses and lilies and wildflowers that had no business blooming in late autumn were sprouting from the frozen ground, unfurling, reaching full bloom in seconds. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Noel stood in the center of it all, laughing with delight, reaching for the flowers with chubby hands. What is this? Teresa whispered. True-born manifestation, Bessie said from beside her. She sounded awed. I've only read about it in the oldest texts. When a true-born's power becomes too much to contain, it manifests in creation. Growth. Life. Is he in danger? No, he's joyful. Look at him. Teresa did. And Bessie was right. Noel wasn't distressed or frightened. He was playing, delighted by the flowers appearing around him, completely unaware that what he was doing was impossible. Clayton stepped forward slowly, approaching his son. The golden light didn't fade as he got closer. If anything, it grew brighter. He knelt in front of Noel. "Hey, little one, making a garden?" Noel babbled happily and grabbed Clayton's hand, trying to pull him toward the flowers. The moment their skin touched, the light pulsed once brilliant and blinding, then began to fade. The flowers remained, perfect and fragrant and completely out of season. But Noel's glow dimmed back to normal, and he yawned hugely, suddenly exhausted. "Someone's ready for bed," Clayton said, scooping him up. Noel tucked his head against Clayton's shoulder and was asleep within seconds. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring in wonder and fear and a dozen other emotions. Teresa stepped into the circle of flowers and touched a rose. It was real, solid, alive. "They all saw," she said quietly. "I know. The kingdoms who were already afraid of him, this will terrify them. I know. Clayton, what do we do?" He looked down at their sleeping son, then at the impossible garden he'd created. "We protect him. We prepare for what's coming. And we hope that when the time comes, there are enough good people in the world to stand with us against the ones who want to destroy him for being different." It wasn't a reassuring answer, but it was honest. The party ended shortly after. The visiting dignitaries made their excuses and departed, some genuinely regretful, others clearly shaken by what they'd witnessed. By midnight, Wolfcrest was quiet again. Teresa stood in Noel's nursery, watching him sleep in his cradle. The golden light was completely gone now, but she could still see it in her mind, could still feel the power that had radiated from him, her son, her miracle, her greatest joy and deepest fear. "He's going to change the world," Clayton said from the doorway. "I know, and not everyone will thank him for it." "I know that too." She turned to face him. "Are we doing the right thing? Raising him here, in the center of politics and power? Maybe we should take him somewhere remote, raise him in secret, and teach him to hide what he is, to be ashamed of his power?" Clayton shook his head. "That's not the answer." "In quote, then what is?" "We raise him to be strong, to be kind, to understand that power is a responsibility, not a right." Clayton moved to stand beside her, looking down at their sleeping son. "We teach him that being different doesn't make him better or worse than anyone else, just different, and that difference can be a gift if he chooses to use it wisely." "You make it sound simple." "It's not. It'll be the hardest thing we ever do." He took her hand. "But we'll do it together." There was that word again. Together. The word that had carried them through impossible odds and unthinkable challenges. The word that meant more than any vow or bond or declaration. Together. Teresa leaned her head against Clayton's shoulder and allowed herself a moment of peace. Tomorrow, they would start building defenses against the Sovereign Alliance. Tomorrow, they would continue the careful diplomatic dance of maintaining friendships while preparing for war. Tomorrow, they would face all the impossible challenges of raising a trueborn child in a world that feared him. But tonight, they were just a family. A mother, a father, and their sleeping son. And that was enough. Epilogue, 5 years later. The classroom in Wolfcrest's East Wing was filled with children. Not just noble children, though there were several, but also the sons and daughters of servants, guards, merchants. Clayton had decreed that all children in the keep would receive education together, regardless of status. It was radical, controversial. It was working. At the front of the classroom, 6-year-old Noel sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by younger children who hung on his every word. And then the Omega told the king, "You don't need to kill to prove you're strong. You need to show mercy," Noel said, his voice carrying the cadence of a well-practiced story, and the king listened. "And that's how my mother saved my father from becoming a monster." The children gasped appropriately. Teresa watched from the doorway, smiling. Noel had grown into a bright, curious child with his father's stubbornness and his mother's empathy. His trueborn powers manifested occasionally, usually in moments of strong emotion, but he was learning control, learning to channel that vast power into creation rather than destruction. and he was learning the stories of his parents. Not sanitized, simplified versions, the real stories, the ones about fear and failure, and choosing to do the right thing even when it was hard. Because Teresa and Clayton had decided early on that Noel needed to understand where he came from. Needed to know that his parents weren't heroes from legends, they were people who had survived impossible circumstances through stubbornness and love. "Is it true?" one of the younger children asked. "That your mama was dying in the snow and your papa saved her?" "Yep. He carried her all the way home through a blizzard. And then she saved him back by making him be better than he thought he could be." Noel grinned. "They save each other. That's what love is." Teresa's eyes filled with tears. 6 years old, and already wiser than most adults. "All right, children," the teacher called. "Time for arithmetic. Noel, you too." Noel groaned but obediently joined the others at the long table. Teresa slipped away before he could see her. She found Clayton in the war room, bent over a map with Vince and several other advisors. "The Sovereign Alliance is mobilizing," Vince was saying. "We have reports of troop movements along the eastern border." "How many?" 5,000, maybe more. Clayton's jaw tightened. "Double the guard. Send word to Marjorie and our other allies. If they're coming, we'll be ready." He looked up and saw Teresa in the doorway. "Give us a moment," he told the advisors. They filed out, leaving them alone. "It's starting," Teresa said. "Isn't it?" "The war," Harvey predicted. "Looks like it. Are we ready?" "As ready as we'll ever be." Clayton crossed to her and pulled her into his arms. "Are you scared?" "Terrified, but also." She paused, searching for the word. "Certain. That we'll survive this, that we'll protect Noel, that we'll win." "How can you be so sure?" "Because we always have. Every time the world tried to break us, we survived. We're still here, still together, still fighting." She looked up at him. "And I don't think that's going to change." Clayton kissed her forehead. "I love you." "I love you too." From somewhere in the keep, they heard Noel's laughter, bright and joyful and utterly fearless. The sound of hope, the sound of the future. Whatever came next, war or peace, triumph or tragedy, they would face it the way they'd faced everything else. Together. And that bond, forged in blood and snow and impossible love, would be strong enough to weather any storm.